My golden child brother face-planted into my cake. I refused to help and mom tried to ruin everything at the wedding. I am a 28-year-old woman from a middle-class family living in a small Midwestern town. My parents, Tom, 58M, and Linda, 56F, worked tirelessly to support us. Dad was a high school English teacher, while mom worked as a nurse in the local hospital. They instilled in us the principles of hard labor and humility, emphasizing that character is more important than material goods. Growing up, our home was simple but full of love. We had weekly game nights where we sat around our old scratched dining table and played board games. Mom would make her wonderful chocolate chip cookies, and Dad would tell us stories about his teaching days. Those nights are among my favorite childhood recollections. My older brother, Jake, 32M, and I were close as children. We'd spend hours building sophisticated Lego castles and exploring the woods behind our house. Jake was always the leader of our trips, and his imagination ran wild as he made up wonderful stories about the mythical animals who lived in our backyard. Jake started high school, and things began to change. He had always been brilliant, but it wasn't until his freshman year that he truly excelled academically. His teachers appreciated his intelligence, and he started winning awards in various academic competitions. I was proud of him, but I also felt a deepening shadow as Jake's accomplishments surpassed my own average performance. The real watershed moment occurred when Jake was given a scholarship to Mentor Academy, a prestigious private high school in the surrounding city. It was a great opportunity that our parents couldn't turn down. Despite the financial pressure of additional expenses not covered by the scholarship, they worked extra shifts and reduced spending to make it work. Jake felt as if he had entered another universe the instant he arrived at Meadowbrook. He made friends with children from wealthy homes, began using phrases we had never heard before, and expressed contempt for our modest existence. When he first brought home a buddy from school, I overheard him apologize for our quaint house. I recall feeling embarrassed and angry. This was our house, where we had created so many beautiful memories. As Jake's high school years continued, the gap between us widened. He rarely attended our family game nights anymore, stating he had too much schoolwork or plans with his new buddies. When he joined us, he made snide remarks about our provincial traditions. It pained to see the sibling I once admired transform into someone I scarcely knew. Despite Jake's adjustments, our parents continued to celebrate his achievements. They proudly told anybody who would listen about Jake's flawless grades, his role as debate team captain, and the prominent universities that were already interested in him. Meanwhile, my good average performance and involvement in the school chorus scarcely registered. I tried not to be bitter and focused on my own hobbies. I joined the school's baking club and developed a penchant for making delectable desserts. The kitchen became my safe haven, where I could express myself and be proud of my accomplishments. Mom would occasionally join me in the kitchen, and those moments were our particular bonding time. Jake was accepted to an Ivy League university on the East Coast after graduating high school. Our parents held a huge celebration the day his acceptance letter arrived. They invited the entire extended family, and Jake revealed his attention. I recall standing in the corner of our living room, watching the family fawn over Jake and feeling invisible. I stayed close to home during college, attending a state university only an hour away. I worked part-time at a local bakery to help pay for my education and provide for our family. Jake rarely returned home during his undergraduate years, stating he was too preoccupied with internships or networking opportunities. When he came to visit, he'd tell us about his significant connections and his college pals' affluent lifestyles. Jake was hired by a top consulting business in New York City after graduating from college. He moved into a beautiful Manhattan apartment, and his life became increasingly reminiscent of a glitzy TV program. Meanwhile, I began working full-time at the bakery where I had previously worked in college, gradually saving money with the goal of eventually opening my own. Fast forward to now, and I've finally realized my dream of creating my own modest bakery in our hometown. It's been open for a year, and while it's not making me wealthy, it's doing well enough to allow me to recruit 2 part-time employees and even assist our parents with some of their expenditures. Mom and Dad have been encouraging, frequently popping by to try new recipes or simply chat during slow afternoons. Jake, on the other hand, has continued to move up the corporate ladder. He's now a senior consultant who frequently brags on social media about his business class trips, elegant client dinners, and pricey watches. His travels home have become increasingly uncommon, and when he comes, he spends the majority of his time on his phone or whining about how there is nothing to do in our backwater town. Last month, our cousin Amy, 25F, married. Amy and I have always been close. She'd frequently join me in the kitchen during family gatherings, where we'd gossip while frosting cupcakes or kneading bread dough. When she requested me to bake her wedding cake, I was honored and spent weeks refining the design. The wedding was a family affair, conducted in the refurbished barn on Amy's fiancé's family farm. It was a lovely, rustic event, with fairy lights hung over wooden beams and wildflowers in mason jars on each table. I arrived early to set up the cake and assist with any last-minute preparations. Jake arrived shortly before the ceremony, dressed in a costly designer suit that seemed absurdly out of place in the barn scene. Throughout the reception, he made loud remarks about how quaint and folksy the wedding was, his voice full of disdain. I witnessed Amy and her new husband's hurt expressions, but they were too polite to say anything. I tried to ignore Jake and focus on Amy's special day. But things took a turn when Jake drank too much. He began flirting aggressively with Sarah, 24F, one of the bridesmaids and Amy's greatest friend since childhood. Sarah was plainly uncomfortable and tried to discreetly excuse herself, but Jake didn't get the signal. Jake slipped and spilled his crimson wine on his pricey white dress shirt and suit jacket. He began creating a commotion, loudly screaming about the cost of the outfit and asking that someone clean it for him. People were staring, and I noticed Amy looking distraught on what was meant to be her beautiful day. Part of me wanted to help Jake, to keep him from exposing himself further and spoiling Amy's wedding, but another part of me believed he deserved to face the consequences of his actions for once. So I remained where I was, pretending to ignore the hubbub. Jake tried to approach Sarah again, and things escalated. He tripped and fell face first into the wedding cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece I had worked on for weeks. The entire room became silent. Jake was coated in cake and icing, looking really foolish in his destroyed fancy suit. He peered around the room, his gaze falling on me. I could see a wordless plea for help in his eyes, a glimpse of the brother I used to know peering through his drunken stupor. But I turned away, leaving him to cope with the catastrophe he caused. Our parents went to Jake's rescue, pulling him up and swiftly leading him out of the reception area. I stayed behind to help Amy and her new husband salvage what was left of their wedding reception. We were able to preserve the bottom tier of the cake, and Amy was gracious enough to joke about the situation, saying it would make for a memorable wedding story. But as I watched Amy bite into what remained of the cake I had put my heart into, I couldn't help but feel a range of emotions: rage at Jake's behavior, guilt for not assisting him, and profound grief for how far away we had drifted. Am I a jerk for not assisting my brother in his moment of humiliation, despite the fact that he has been annoying me for years? Should I have set aside my hatred and intervened to assist him, or was it appropriate to let him suffer the consequences of his conduct for once? Update 1. Amy's wedding took place approximately a month ago, and a lot has happened since then. I thought I'd give you an update on Jake's situation and how things have progressed in our family. I awoke the day after the wedding to a torrent of angry texts from Jake. He accused me of abandoning him and made him appear foolish. Some of his texts were hardly comprehensible, consisting of drunken typos and furious allegations. I didn't answer any of them, figuring that it was best to let him calm down before engaging in any kind of discourse. Later that day, I got a call from our parents. Mom was in tears, and Dad's voice was full of sadness. They chastised me for not assisting Jake, stating I should have set my sentiments aside and aided my brother in his hour of need. I tried to explain my side of the story, but they were too concerned with Jake's disgrace to listen. The call ended with Mom sobbing and Dad telling me I needed to apologize to Jake. I spent the following several days in a whirl of contradictory feelings. On the one hand, I felt bad for not assisting Jake. Despite everything, he was still my brother. On the other hand, I was outraged. Angry at Jake for his behavior, angry at my parents for always siding with him, and angry at myself for still worrying what others thought. A week after the wedding, our grandma, Nana Rose, 75F, asked the entire family to Sunday dinner. Nana Rose has always served as our family's matriarch, the voice of reason in every quarrel. She lives in the ancient farmhouse where my father grew up, which has always felt more like home to me than our own house. I was scared to go because I knew Jake would be there, but I couldn't refuse Nana Rose. As I drove up Nana's meandering driveway, I was brought back to childhood summers spent running around her vegetable garden, helping her make strawberry jam, and listening to her tell stories about our family's past. Nana Rose was the one who taught me how to bake, tenderly guiding my young hands as we kneaded bread dough together. The evening started quite tense. Jake refused to look at me, and our parents ignored me, but Nana Rose, bless her heart, was having none of it. After the main course, her famous pot roast, which reminds me of comfortable Sunday dinners, she cleared her throat and addressed the elephant in the room. "Now I've heard about what happened at Amy's wedding," she said, her tone firm yet sympathetic. "And I think it's high time we had a family discussion about respect and humility." What followed was an hour-long talk in which Nana Rose carefully addressed the difficulties in our family dynamic. She discussed how Jake's actions had been tolerated for years, how our parents' favoritism had caused a schism among siblings, and how my bitterness had grown over time. She reminded us of the ideals that our grandfather, who died 5 years ago, had always attempted to inculcate in us. Grandpa had been a farmer with few words but much wisdom. He once said, "A family is like a garden. You reap what you sow, and if you don't tend to all the plants equally, some will wither while others overgrow." To my astonishment, Jake did not interject or attempt to defend himself. He sat there, appearing more modest than I had seen him in years. When Nana Rose finished speaking, Jake did something unexpected. He apologized. "I'm sorry," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I've been a real jerk, haven't I?" The room went silent for a moment before I found my voice. "Yeah, you have," I said, but without the rage I had been harboring for so long. Jake went on to say that the wedding incident was not the only thing that had occurred recently. He had lost his position at the consulting firm. Apparently, his behavior at work was as arrogant as it was at home, and his employer had had enough. He stated that he had overcompensated during the wedding in order to maintain the idea of success. As Jake talked, I saw my brother again, not the arrogant, condescending guy he'd grown into, but the vulnerable, uncertain person beneath. He spoke of feeling adrift, the pressure he put on himself to succeed, and how hollow his accomplishments felt. Our parents, to their credit, apologized for allowing Jake's actions. Mom, tears in her eyes, revealed that she had pushed Jake so hard because she wanted him to have the possibilities she had not had. Dad admitted that he favored Jake because he resembled himself at that age, ambitious and anxious to put small-town life behind. As for myself, I admit that I could have handled the wedding situation better. While I didn't regret not rushing to Jake's rescue right once, I realized that my hesitation was fueled by years of pent-up animosity. By the conclusion of the night, I felt as if a weight had been lifted. We didn't get everything resolved in one dinner, but it was a start. Jake asked if he may come by my bakery sometime and see what I had constructed. I agreed, but warily. As we were leaving, Nana Rose approached me. She pushed a battered leather-bound book into my hands, her recipe book, which I had seen her write numerous times over the years. "I think you'll make better use of this than I will now," she added with a wink. "And remember, family is like bread dough. Sometimes you need to let it rest, but you always come back to knead it with love." It's been a few weeks since that supper, and things have changed. Not great, but different. Jake has made an attempt to be less arrogant, and our parents have been more concerned with treating us equally. Jake has begun to come to the bakery not only to visit, but also to help. He's bad at baking, but he's trying, which means more to me than words can explain. I'm trying to let go of some past resentments. It's not easy. Years of feeling second best don't go away overnight, but I'm working on it day by day. I know we still have a long way to go, but for the first time in years, I am optimistic about my connection with my brother, my home, and our family. I'll keep you all updated as things go. Update 2. It's been another 2 months since my last post, and I wanted to share the progress our family has achieved, as well as some new obstacles that have occurred. Following our family supper at Nana Rose's, Jake and I began to restore our friendship. He's been coming to the bakery on a regular basis, not just to visit, but also to assist out. It began as a disaster. He almost wrecked a batch of croissants and managed to get flour into places I had no idea existed in my kitchen. But he's been persistent, and I must confess, it's been lovely having him around. One day, as we were closing up the bakery, Jake admitted that he had always envied my ability to make something solid with my hands. "All those years in consulting," he explained, "and I never got to see or taste the consequences of my efforts. But here, every day, you create something real that makes people happy." That chat inspired us to establish a new tradition of Sunday brunches in which we take turns cooking for each other. Last Sunday, Jake tried to make cinnamon rolls from scratch. They were humorously uneven and little overdone, but the effort meant more to me than any expensive gift he could have purchased in his previous life. Jake has also been volunteering at the local community center, where he teaches basic computer skills to elderly. It's been great to see him use his knowledge to help others without expecting any recognition or return. He informed me that working with the elders has given him a fresh perspective on what is actually essential in life. Our parents have also been making attempts. Mom has been increasingly interested in my bakery, even asking for baking lessons. Dad, who was usually distant, has been trying to connect with both of us equally. He's been assisting me with business planning for the bakery and brainstorming ideas with Jake for potential new career pathways. However, just as our relationship was improving, a new difficulty developed. Our parents, particularly our mother, appeared to be struggling with the shift in family dynamics. About a month ago we held another family meal, this time at our parents' home. Jake and I arrived together, chatting amicably about a funny event at my bakery involving a mix-up of salt and sugar in a batch of cookies. I sensed something was up with Mom from the moment we came in. She appeared stiff, her smile a little forced as she greeted us. Throughout dinner, Mom kept bringing up Jake's previous employment, asking if he had heard back from any of his important connections. Mom's face sank as Jake respectfully diverted the subject, talking instead of his volunteer work. I could sense disappointment in her eyes, which made me uneasy. Mom called me away into the living room after dinner, while Jake was helping Dad with the dishes, which was another new development. The room was adorned with framed images of our family, and I couldn't help but note how many of them celebrated Jake's accomplishments. High school graduation, college admittance, and first job offer. It was like a temple to his previous achievements. "Emma, don't you think you should be encouraging Jake to get back into the corporate world?" she remarked quietly. "All this bakery talk and volunteer work. It's not really suitable for someone of his caliber, is it?" I was shocked. "Mom, Jake seems happier now than he has in years," I told her. "Isn't that what's important?" Mom shook her head, her gaze drawn to a photo of Jake in his fancy outfit taken a few years ago. "But he had a very promising career. All that schooling, all those opportunities. It all feels so pointless." I attempted to explain that Jake was finding fulfillment on his new route and that he was becoming a better person, but Mom wouldn't listen. She seemed intent on Jake returning to his high-flying corporate career. This chat made me realize a frightening reality. While Jake and I worked on our problems, our parents, particularly Mom, were struggling to adjust to the new family dynamic. They had focused so much of their pride on Jake's corporate achievement that they failed to appreciate the importance in his personal development. Over the next few weeks, this became a frequent problem. Mom would make subtle, and occasionally not so subtle remarks about Jake getting back on track. She'd email him job advertisements for corporate opportunities and discuss connections she could make for him. A particularly heated occasion occurred during a family cookout. Jake was excitedly informing everyone about a group of seniors he had assisted in setting up their first email accounts. The excitement on his face was apparent as he told how one elderly woman had burst into tears over being able to see images of her great-grandchildren who resided across the country. Mom, instead of sharing Jake's joy, merely remarked, "That's fine, honey, but have you considered using your skills for something more substantial? I heard the city's tech firm is hiring." The light in Jake's eyes dulled, and I felt a wave of protectiveness I hadn't felt since we were kids. Before I could say anything, Dad intervened. "Linda," he added gently, "I believe what Jake is doing is quite significant. He's making a significant difference in people's lives." It was the first time I had witnessed Dad openly disagreeing with Mom about Jake's choices, and the tension was evident. Mom pursed her lips but did not protest further. Jake, to his credit, has handled the situation gracefully. He softly but firmly informs Mom that he does not want to return to that life right now, but I can see the strain it is having on him and his relationship with our parents. Dad appears more receptive of Jake's new route, although he does not always stand up to Mom when she starts pressing Jake. It's causing fresh tensions in our family, just when Jake and I were beginning to rebuild our relationship. I'm torn on how to handle this. On the one hand, I want to encourage Jake on his road of self-improvement. On the other hand, I don't want to escalate our argument with our parents, especially because we've only recently begun to confront our prior concerns. Jake and I have discussed it and we are both at a loss. We're thinking of having another meeting, possibly with Nana Rose there again, to handle this new difficulty, but we're concerned about how Mom will react. As always, any advice is appreciated. How do we help our parents, particularly Mom, understand and embrace Jake's new direction in life? Update 3. It has been another month since my last post, and I am pleased to announce that we have made tremendous progress in our family situation. After much deliberation, Jake and I decided to approach our parents directly. We invited them and Nana Rose to my bakery for an after-hours family meeting. We hoped that neutral territory would assist to keep things quiet. I was nervous all evening before the meeting. I spent the afternoon stress baking, resulting in an oversupply of cookies and muffins to place out on the tables. As people arrived, the bakery filled with the familiar aroma of freshly baked goods, a perfume that always makes me think of home and family. The conference began tensely. Mom was protective from the beginning, arguing that she simply wanted the best for Jake. Dad was relatively quiet, but you could see the conflict on his face. Nana Rose sat silently, her wise eyes absorbing everything. Jake talked first, gently explaining how much pleased and fulfilled he was in his new life. He discussed how satisfied he was with his volunteer work and how he was considering starting his own small business after being inspired by the success of my bakery. "Mom, Dad," he continued, his voice firm but tearful, "I know you wanted the best for me, And I appreciate everything you've done, but the corporate world wasn't making me happy. I was constantly anxious, didn't sleep well, and felt like I was losing myself. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. I told Jake how delighted I was of his personal development and how our relationship had improved. I also expressed my dissatisfaction with Mom's persistent pressure on Jake to return to his previous lifestyle. Mom didn't take it well initially. She became distraught, expressing her inability to comprehend why Jake would toss away his degree and chances. "We sacrificed so much to give you those opportunities," she continued, her voice breaking. "How can you just walk away from all of that?" That is when Nana Rose walked in. Nana Rose addressed Mom with a straightforward question: "What's more important to you, Jake's resume or Jake's happiness?" That question appeared to stop Mom in her tracks. For a time, she was speechless. Then, to everyone's amazement, she began crying. Mom revealed through tears that she had always been insecure about our family's modest origins. Jake's corporate success had been a source of pride for her, a way to demonstrate that our family could succeed in the world. Jake's departure from that existence seemed to her like a step backward. "I just wanted you to have everything I never had," she replied, addressing both Jake and myself. "I didn't want you to struggle like your father and I did." It was a watershed moment. For the first time, we all understood why Mom behaved the way she did. Dad, finally finding his voice, acknowledged that he had given in to Mom's pressure on Jake because he didn't want to disappoint her, despite his own pride in Jake's new path. "I see now that we were so focused on external success that we forgot about what really matters," Dad stated, his voice full of sorrow. "I'm sorry we put that pressure on you, Jake, and Emma. I'm sorry we didn't appreciate your path as much as we should have." The conversation that ensued was open, emotional, and ultimately therapeutic. We talked about redefining success and the importance of personal pleasure over cultural expectations. Mom began to see that her actions, while well-intentioned, had been damaging. Nana Rose told us about our family's history, including great-grandparents who survived the Great Depression and Grandpa's decision to become a farmer despite his own parents' objections. "Our family's strength," she told me, "has always been in our ability to forge our own paths and support each other, no matter what." By the end of the night, we had reached several key agreements. Our parents would appreciate Jake's decisions and not stress him on his profession. We would hold regular family meetings to check in and handle any issues before they escalated. We would all work on expressing our emotions more openly and honestly to one another. We'd rather encourage one another's happiness than try to meet external standards. While we were cleaning up, Mom approached me. She grabbed one of the cookies I had cooked earlier and took a nibble. "These are wonderful, Emma," she replied softly. "I'm sorry I didn't appreciate your talent as much as I should. Are you willing to teach me how to create these?" This simple request seemed like the start of a new chapter in our relationship. Things have greatly improved in the weeks since that meeting. Mom has ceased sending Jake job postings and has even expressed an interest in his charity activities. Last week, she stunned everyone by asking Jake to teach her basic computer skills, exactly like he does in his community center lessons. Dad has become more vocal about his support for both Jake and myself. He's been assisting me with some business planning for my bakery and brainstorming ideas with Jake about his potential new business endeavor. As for Jake and me, our bond is only getting stronger. Our Sunday brunches have become the highlight of my week. Last Sunday, Jake attempted to make a pie from scratch using one of Nana Rose's old recipes. The crust was a little tough, and the inside was runny, but we laughed together while eating it, planning his next baking attempt. There are certainly tensions and old patterns that creep in from time to time, but instead of allowing them to fester, we discuss them honestly and work them out together. I know we still have work to do, but I'm so pleased with how far we've gone as a family. Jake's embarrassing event at Amy's wedding, as unpleasant as it was, proved to be the trigger for significant positive change in our lives. Thank you all for your encouragement and wisdom along this trip. Your perspectives helped me navigate these difficult family relationships. While we are not perfect, we are learning and growing together, which is what truly matters. I got a haircut, my husband freaked out, and now I'm divorced. I, 29M, was running some errands today and spontaneously decided to get a haircut. My hair wasn't that long, only to my chin, but it's been bothering me for a while now. It's not a drastic difference, just a little shorter and a more conveniently masculine style. I didn't even think about telling my husband, 41M, before doing it. When I got home and he saw my new haircut, he immediately got pissed. I asked him if he liked it and he said he didn't. He asked what I'd been thinking about cutting off my hair without talking to him first. I honestly didn't think it'd be such a big deal because it's just hair and it'll grow back eventually. But when I told him that, he completely freaked out and said if I didn't care about it, I should just cut all of it off. I'm now locked in the bathroom until I shave my head. I'm honestly in a bit of a shock because I didn't expect this to escalate this way. I don't want to shave my head, but I also don't want to stay in the bathroom forever. Is it really such a big deal that I didn't talk to my husband beforehand? Update. I decided that it's not worth fighting over this, so I'm just going to shave it off. I kind of made it a bigger issue than it should have been anyway. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Also, I'm not a woman. Where's the line between controlling and abusive? July 26, 2024. My husband and I had a fight yesterday. It wasn't even anything serious, but it escalated a little. I got a haircut without talking to him about it first, and he got mad about it. I then made it worse by saying that it's not a big deal and just hair that will grow back, so he made me shave my head to prove his point. He's always been a little neurotic about things like plans and giving him a heads up before I do anything. He generally doesn't like it when I do things he hasn't approved first, like when I order something at a restaurant or when I make plans with people he doesn't know that well. But that's just how he is. I guess he's a micromanager and can be a little uptight about things, but I never took any of that as abusive. When I made a post on Reddit about our fight yesterday, a lot of comments said he's abusive. I don't think I'm being abused though. He never gets violent with me or forces me to do things I don't want to. But it got me thinking that maybe there are things I should look out for in case he ever changes. You were right, I left him. August 10, 2024. I just wanted to let you know that you were right. After what happened last month, things kept getting worse. Last night we had another fight that escalated, and after I was released from the hospital, I went straight to my sister's house. Tomorrow, she and her boyfriend are coming with me to collect some of my stuff. I'd like to think that I would have left him without your comments on my last post, but I'm honestly not completely sure if I wouldn't have just tried to find excuses for his behavior. So thank you for that. I gifted my stepdaughter a house, but she uninvited me from her wedding. Now I'm taking back everything I gave. I, 62M, am dealing with a challenging situation with my stepdaughter. I have been married to her mother, Sarah, for 15 years. My first wife, Emily, died of cancer when I was 45. Emily and I were high school sweethearts who married for 25 beautiful years. We never had children because of Emily's health problems. After Emily died, I was devastated and devoted myself to my career as a real estate developer. 3 years later, Sarah and I met at a charity event. She was energetic, friendly, and had a 10-year-old daughter named Lily. We hit it off right away and I felt pulled to both of them. Sarah had been suffering as a single mom. Tom, Lily's biological father, left her when she was 2 years old. He'd come and go in their lives, but he never offered genuine support. I saw an opportunity to rediscover love and be the father figure Lily needed. Lily and I developed a close relationship over time. I assisted her with her homework, went to her school functions, and was present for every milestone. I paid for her college education so she may have every option in life. Lily is now 25, and she is engaged to a nice young man named Mike. To show my support and affection, I decided to give them a house as a pre-wedding gift. It's a lovely home in a pleasant area, ideal for beginning their new life. However, when the wedding invitations arrived, I was astonished and extremely disappointed to learn that I was not invited. At first I assumed it was a mistake. Surely, after all these years, Lily would not remove me from her special day. I am at a loss. I've always treated Lily like my own daughter, and I assumed she saw me as a parent. Now I'm wondering if I should take back the house I gave them. It's not about the money. I'm lucky that finances aren't an issue. It is the underlying principle. I feel misled and underappreciated. Am I overreacting? Should I confront Lily about this, or simply accept her decision and move on, even if it means returning my gift? I recall when I first met Lily. She was timid and apprehensive, hiding between Sarah's legs. But she eventually opened up to me. I remember teaching her how to ride a bike and seeing the satisfaction in her eyes when she eventually balanced without training wheels. I was there on her first day of high school, reassuring her when she was concerned about fitting in. When she suffered her first heartbreak at 16, I was the one who sat with her, offering ice cream and a listening ear. We had our own traditions too. Every Sunday, we had a family game night. Lily insisted on playing the banker in Monopoly, and we would giggle at how serious she took her position. On her 18th birthday, I surprised her with a car, not fancy, but dependable. The sight of utter excitement on her face when I handed her the keys is something I'll always remember. When Lily was accepted to college, we celebrated as a family. I recall her hugging me firmly and whispering "Thank you, Dad" into my ear. It was the first time she'd called me Dad, and it meant everything to me. All of these recollections make the current situation even more agonizing. How could she forget what we'd been through together? The thought of not being there on her wedding day, not leading her down the aisle, not having that father-daughter dance is painful. I have always thought that family is more than just blood. It's about love, support, and sticking with each other through thick and thin. I assumed Lily felt the same way. Now I'm doubting everything. Part of me wants to face her immediately and demand an explanation. But another part of me is scared of what I may hear. What if she claims she never truly saw me as a father? What if this is her way of letting me know I'm not family? I chatted to Sarah about it, but she appears hesitant to get engaged. She thinks I should talk to Lily directly, but how can I when she doesn't even answer my phone? The house I gave them was meant to represent my love and support for their new life together. Now it serves as a sad reminder of my exclusion from that existence. Taking it back feels petty, yet leaving it implies that I accept her decision to cut me off. I never imagined I would be in this position. When I married Sarah and became a part of Lily's life, I made a full commitment to becoming a father figure. For 15 years, I have loved her as if she were my own. It's crushing to watch something so readily discarded. Is it wrong for me to decide to take back the house? Is it inappropriate to seek recognition for the part I've played in her life? Should I just let her have her wedding, even if it means I won't be there? I'm torn and could need some outside perspective. Update 1. It has been a week since my last post, and I would like to provide an update on the situation. Thank you for your guidance and support. It's been a difficult period, and your feedback has been invaluable. After much thought, I decided to address Lily about her choice to exclude me from the wedding. However, this turned out to be more challenging than I expected. Lily appeared to be avoiding me. She did not return my calls or react to my texts. It was as if she had unexpectedly become a stranger. Frustrated and hurt, I looked to my wife Sarah for answers. What she said left me stunned. Apparently, Lily wishes to invite her biological father, Tom, to the wedding. The same man who abandoned her and Sarah when she was a kid. Sarah revealed that Lily had been in contact with Tom for approximately a year. He unexpectedly reappeared in her life, claiming to have changed and wanted to make amends. According to Sarah, Tom indicated a wish to be a part of Lily's life again and to lead her down the aisle on her wedding day. I was stunned. For years, Tom had been nothing but a disappointment for Lily. I remember the nights I spent comforting her after he broke yet another promise to visit. I was present for her first heartbreak, her high school graduation, and her college acceptance, all of the events Tom decided to miss. Tom's record as a father is far from impressive. He never paid child support, rarely showed up on birthdays or holidays, and appeared to be more concerned with his own life than with being a parent. I can't help but wonder what's behind his abrupt change of heart. The discovery that Lily had been in covert communication with Tom for a year stung almost as much as being denied entry to the wedding. I assumed Lily and I had a tight relationship, one in which she could come to me with anything. Finding out she had been keeping this from me for so long seemed like a betrayal. I'm attempting to grasp Lily's point of view. I understand how great the need to have a relationship with one's biological parent might be, but after everything we've gone through together, and all the love and support I've given her, how can she just abandon me? I recall one particular instance when Lily was 14. Tom agreed to take her to a father-daughter dance at her school. Lily was so excited that she spent weeks looking for the ideal dress. Tom did not show up for the dance, and there was no call or explanation. I found Lily crying in her room, still dressed. Without hesitation, I dressed on a suit and we headed to the dance together. We had a great time, and Lily appeared to forget about Tom's absence. That night, when I tucked her into bed, she hugged me and exclaimed, "You're the best dad ever." How could she forget things like this? There was also a moment when Lily required braces. Tom had pledged to pay for them, but when the time arrived, he could not be found. I stepped in without hesitation to ensure Lily received the necessary dental care. For 2 years, I drove her to every orthodontist visit, bought her ice cream after particularly difficult adjustments, and celebrated with her when the braces were finally removed. These recollections exacerbate the misery of the current circumstance. How can Lily pick Tom over me after all we've been through? I've been present for every significant event in her life, whereas Tom has been nothing but a series of unfulfilled promises. I have concluded that I need to speak with Lily personally. I cannot let this situation continue without confronting it head-on. I've sent her a message asking to meet, emphasizing that if she doesn't accept, I'll have to make some difficult decisions about my involvement in her life and the wedding gift. I'm hoping she agrees to meet. I need to comprehend her reasons and communicate how much her actions have wounded me. Am I wrong to seek this confrontation? Should I just let her have her wedding, even if it means I won't be there? As I await Lily's reaction, I find myself reflecting on our connection. I remember spending hours in parking lots teaching her how to drive my old sedan. I remember the nights we spent working on her college applications, and the pleasure I had when she was accepted to her ideal institution. I remember the day she moved into her dorm, hugging me farewell with tears in her eyes and murmuring, "I'm going to miss you, Dad." These recollections make her current acts even more perplexing. How can she so quickly abandon years of love and support? Is the pull of biology truly so powerful, or have I unintentionally failed her as a father figure? I'm also dealing with my feelings for Tom. Part of me is irritated with Dad for swooping in now, after years of absence, and upsetting our family dynamic. Another part of me is anxious about Lily. What happens if he disappoints her again? Will I have to pick up the pieces once more? As I prepare to confront Lily, I'm filled with mixed emotions. I'm hurt, furious, and bewildered, but deep down, I still love her. I want the best for her, but I also need to safeguard my emotions. I'll update after speaking with Lily. Thank you for your ongoing support during this tough time. Update 2. Hello everyone. I'm here with another update on the situation with Lily, my stepdaughter. A lot has transpired since my last post, and I'm still absorbing it. Lily finally consented to meet with me following my ultimatum. We met in a neighborhood coffee shop, which provided a neutral setting for what I expected to be a difficult conversation. As soon as we sat down, I could sense shame in her eyes, but also a stubbornness I'd never seen before. I began by stating how saddened I was by her decision to exclude me from the wedding. I reminded her of the years we'd spent together, and how I'd been there for her when Tom wasn't. I informed her, "Lily, I have been there for you since you were 10 years old. I assisted you with your homework, taught you how to drive, and supported you throughout college. I have treated you like my own daughter. How can you push me aside now?" Lily's remark shocked me. She said, "I know you've done a lot for me, and I appreciate it, but Tom is my true father. He wants to make things right, and I want to give him the opportunity." I couldn't believe what I heard. I questioned her. What about all the times he failed you? What about all those birthdays he missed? What about the child support that he never paid? Does none of this matter? She responded, "People may change. He is different today. He wants to be a part of my life." I could feel my anger mounting. I told her that it was I who had sponsored her education and been present at all of her life's major moments. And now that she was capable and established in her life, she wanted to ask the man who had abandoned her to lead her down the aisle. Lily then dropped another shocker. She explained, "Tom has agreed to contribute to the wedding expenditures. He wants to take responsibility." That was the final straw for me. I told her, "Fine, if Tom wants to be your father now, let him accept all of the obligations that come with it. I will not be paying for anything related to this wedding, and the house I gifted you should also be considered off the table." Lily's face fell. I could tell she had not expected this reaction. She attempted to backtrack, claiming she still wanted me in her life, just not at the wedding. But for me, the damage had already been done. I stepped up to depart, but first I told her, "Lily, I have always considered you my daughter. I believed you felt the same way about me as your father. I suppose I was incorrect. I hope Tom meets your expectations this time." With that, I departed the coffee shop. The drive home was a haze. When I returned home, I informed Sarah what had transpired. She was unhappy, but she acknowledged Lily's wish to have her biological father in her life. She did, however, agree that Lily's actions were both painful and unfair. I've subsequently called my lawyer to begin the process of reclaiming the house. It is not about the money, but about the principle. I can't in good conscience give such a valuable thing to someone who doesn't consider me family. As I ponder on our talk, I realize how much Lily has changed. The stubborn young woman in the coffee shop appeared so unlike the tiny child who would run to me for comfort after a nightmare, or the adolescent who proudly showed me her first A+ on a difficult math test. I recall the day Lily graduated from high school. As she came across the stage to receive her graduation, she smiled broadly and gave me a thumbs up. Later, at her graduation party, she hugged me firmly and said, "I couldn't have done this without you, Dad." Where is Lily now? I can't help but think about how many times Tom has let Lily down in the past. He had offered to take her camping for her 13th birthday, but then canceled at the last minute. I ended up bringing her instead, showing her how to pitch a tent and cook marshmallows over a campfire. Or the time he promised to help her move into her college dorm but didn't show up. I was there, hauling boxes and helping her paint her new room. Now Tom swoops in with promises of transformation and financial assistance, and he's suddenly the father she wants by her side. It feels like a slap in the face after years of supporting her through thick and thin. Part of me worries if I'm being overly harsh. Should I be more accepting of Lily's wish to establish a relationship with her biological father? But then I remember the pain in Sarah's eyes when Tom abandoned them years ago, and how hard we've fought to create a loving family. Lily seemed to be throwing everything out on a whim. I understand that some people may think I'm being petty or overreacting by taking back the house and withholding financial support for the wedding, but from my standpoint, Lily has made her decision. Despite our shared history, she chose Tom over me. It hurts, but I must protect myself emotionally and financially. Should I have been more accepting of Lily's desire to reconcile with her biological father? I'm still conflicted, but I believe I need to stand my stance. I will provide an update if there are any notable developments. Thank you for your support and wisdom during this tough time. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been 6 months since my last update, and I'd like to discuss what has transpired since then. A lot has changed, and I'm still coming to terms with it. Following the altercation with Lily, I followed through on my plan to take back the house and withdraw my financial assistance for the wedding. It was a hard time. Sarah was caught between supporting her daughter and recognizing my pain. Our relationship deteriorated and Sarah eventually decided to leave temporarily to be with Lily during the wedding preparations. The wedding proceeded as scheduled, with Tom leading Lily down the aisle. I wasn't there of course, but I heard about it through common friends. They described the ceremony as beautiful, but there was a palpable sense of anxiety. For a long, I didn't hear from Lily or Sarah. I immersed myself into my work, hoping to distract myself from the grief of losing my family. I will not lie, it was a lonely and tough period. Then about a week ago Sarah called me. Her voice was shaky and I knew she had been sobbing. She admitted, "We made a tremendous error. We're very sorry." Sarah went on to relate what transpired following the wedding. Tom had stayed for almost a month, playing the doting father. He did provide some money to the wedding expenditures, as promised, but as the bills piled up and the reality of continued financial responsibility dawned on him, Tom began to remove himself. Tom vanished within 2 months after the wedding, like he had done years before. He stopped answering phones, avoided Lily and Sarah, and effectively disappeared from their lives once more. Lily was devastated. She honestly believed Tom had changed and wanted to be a part of her life. The realization that he had let her down again, especially after she had put forth so much effort to include him, was painful. Sarah explained that Lily had been too embarrassed to contact me herself. She felt bad about how she had treated me and feared that I would not want to hear from her. Sarah stated, "She sees what a mistake she made. She misses you so badly." I listened to Sarah's remarks with mixed emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. I had been correct about Tom all along. However, a larger part of me felt melancholy. Lily was sad because her biological father had let her down yet again. "I'm sorry for the anguish this has caused our family." I told Sarah, "I appreciate you telling me this, but the damage is done. I can't just pretend the last 6 months haven't happened." Sarah pleaded with me to rethink and give Lily another opportunity. But I remained firm. I added, "I'm not saying I'll never forgive Lily, but right now I need some time." She made her decision, and now we all have to deal with the repercussions. We concluded the call on a melancholy tone. I told Sarah she was free to return whenever she was ready, but I needed more time before I could consider recreating a connection with Lily. As I sit here writing this final update, I am still absorbing everything that has transpired. Part of me wants to reach out to Lily, soothe her, and assure her that everything will be fine. But a part of me is still hurting and resentful. I know some of you believe I'm being too harsh, that I should forgive and forget, but trust is a fragile thing that, once destroyed, is difficult to recover. I need time to heal, to choose whether and how I can move ahead from this. For now, I'm concentrating on myself. I'm seeing a therapist to work through my emotions and I'm attempting to reconstruct my life without Lily in it. It's not easy, but I think it's vital. Thank you for your continued support along this journey. Your suggestions and insights have been invaluable. I'm not sure what the future contains, but I'm preparing to confront it with bravery and dignity. My neglectful dad and scheming stepmom tried to steal my home for my spoiled pregnant stepsister, but karma just hit them hard. Recently learning how much I, M34, make, my dad, M62, is miserably self-centered. Generally missing. Unbelievably, he chose to evict me from my own house, all in the name of family. My stepsister and tiny gem, Ash, F29, who can do nothing wrong, has miraculously become pregnant. She struggles to find herself a place to stay as her highly self-reliant aspirations are those of an escort and an OnlyFans model. Now Dad wants everything fixed, and I'm the fixer. I regretfully had to part from my house and my hard-earned money with this woman since she made all the wrong decisions. The man my dad openly turned off as a duty several times is me. Ever since he learned about my new residence, job, and shockingly low income though, he has become somewhat sensitive about our shared blood. Although I'm not thrilled with him constantly telling me who my father is, he also wants to deepen the ties I have with his wife and her daughter. She is my dad's child as well, but I was banished far too early to establish any type of relationship with the woman. I'm glad I didn't, since I would have been somewhat let down. I simply want to remind everyone before you all start that I'm here to let out my feelings. I have ideas, opinions and sentiments to put down. Though you may disagree and they might not sound good to you, I am just letting you know regardless, since, to be honest, I have no one else to tell. Now let me present my half-sister Ash, short Ashlyn. She is literally making her dad proud. She is about 5 years younger than I am. Dad is delusional, as this woman is out there only serving as an escort, sleeping with a bunch of OnlyFans, and my father calls her his pride. You did really read correctly. I suppose he is not familiar with the major deal. Someone is going to tell him. Though I'm not too conservative, I try to concentrate on my morals and profession. When I have the time to get to know them better, I court women. There is occasionally a spark, but other elements also play a role, including vast distance and availability problems. Other times, one finds absolutely no understanding. I try not to spend random nights sleeping with anyone. I ought to wait for the proper woman. I get sick looking at a large body count. Guys displaying it like a medal is repulsive. I'm not sure why. Still, this is what I live by in my own life. Unfortunately, my sister holds the reverse view. She most certainly no longer counts her physical partners. She is now an escort, which personally repels me. Moreover, it is quite harmful as well. Certain guys enjoy performing odd activities for escorts. I have no idea how someone would view working like that as being acceptable. She then posts indecent movies and pictures of herself on the internet in order to profit from it, but she finds little success there. She most likely lacks knowledge on how to start the traffic, but for whatever reason it is a flop. From what sources am I aware of this? Here is an awkward story. My friend mentioned it to me. Ash asked him if he wanted to have fun after texting him once following their drink meeting. Hearing the narrative, I had already warmed up a little when the man left with my sister, but he said it was only after he realized she was my sister. He told me she had emailed him the URL to her page, and he showed me too. I'm not sure whether he is speaking the truth. She breaks constantly and begs Dad for money, hence I believe she isn't doing very well. I never told Dad either. I couldn't even bring myself to question her about it straight. I observed her answering a call, then seated in the car with an old man another time. He left her flowers and headed off. She would sneak back into the house at strange hours through the window. This became evident when I used to return home over holidays from college. Though I'm not sure if she is still at it, I do not want to be involved in any of it. I'm glad about having a respectable post where I work. At last, I haven't lived much with the new family since my dad was disturbed enough to send me away any opportunity he could have. But I have seen Ash close enough to claim she follows her mother, Marissa, F58. Marissa thought she was really the icon in her heyday. She was really beautiful to men like my dad and used to be a flight attendant. If you know what I mean, she is now a regular botched face Karen. She runs the sort of neighborhood childcare and has hands like those of a claw, nails longer than her lipstick. Odd how parents would leave their children with someone like that. She could point out a child's eye with such long nails. She is, nevertheless, exactly as pokey as her nails. She loves to create trouble in other people's life and opinions about anything. She has more plastic in her body than the sea and a quite terrible voice. She is as real as phony leather. She affects Dad for the worst. She didn't want to raise a child that wasn't her own, hence I think she was a big factor in my dad not thinking twice before sending me 8 years to boarding school. Let me then introduce you to my dad. Actually, he is more the main cause of all this. Having lived a complete life, he believes anything he does in life is justified even if it is far, far from it, since he understands better. He laments having me since I'm not like him. Thank you God, I am not. My mother was a formidable woman. She looked after my dad well and clearly knew her priorities, yet they clashed. I should never forget that she used to tell me Dad was just a different person, not a horrible one. He will always be my dad regardless of what happens. She was a good person though. She didn't want to contaminate my views against my father. He was definitely as intolerable to her as he is now. Few months later, they split and divorced. 4 years old at the time. 2 months after the divorce, my dad then wed Marissa. When I reached 5, they had Ash. Later, my mother passed away in a car accident. She was out to come pick me from school, so I can't forget that. She had always been on time, she just missed 10 minutes once. Though it seemed to me like an hour, it was only 10 minutes. A drunk hit her at a crossroads. He made it, she did not. A few years ago he got a DUI, and I was left alone permanently. I waited in the school. It took them 2 hours to arrive to pick me up. My dad had come, hence I was misled and puzzled. His irritation when he turned to dead-faced Marissa and asked what they should do about me will never fade. She answered, "Your kid, your problem. Specifically, Dad. You cannot now come and tell me I will have to look after your spoiled child. At last I have steady work and oversee some side enterprises. Since I turned 15, I have been earning and have worked quite hard. I started boarding school, then moved to college, only visiting over the holidays, so I started living alone 8 years ago. I recently bought a property after working very hard to reach where I am. This is a wonderful modest house, far better than the apartment I had with buddies. I felt I would never be able to reach this life aim. Actually, I just moved in last month. Although I might not like my family much, fundamental politeness was to involve them in a moment this significant, thus I asked them to the housewarming as well. Watching his response was quite depressing. As he inquired about the furniture, the architect and the interior designer, he seemed jealous, to be honest, a bit annoyed. When I provided him what I believed was sufficient information, he answered with taunts such as, "I wouldn't know, you never bothered telling me," trying to get attention and clearly show our weak connection in front of friends and business associates, including my boss. 1 week went by and he called me. I had an intricate job to oversee while at work. I accepted since he mentioned he needed to meet urgently. When I got home, Marissa and puffy, red-eyed Ash were glaring from the living room and I avoided her. Dad was in the kitchen pulling beers from the refrigerator. He gave me one, and I graciously turned him down fearing what he might say. When I asked him what he wanted from me, he furrowed his eyebrows and answered another question, asking whether I had lately started complaining about us. Not sure what he was getting at, I scowled in uncertainty. He invited me to hang in the living room with Ash and Marissa. I nodded and turned to settle on a couch across from the two. Ash folded her arms. Marissa rolled her eyes. Dad came in and sat with them facing me. Leaving his beer bottle on the sofa table, he leaned back. Then he wanted to know whether I was blind. There was a pause, probably bewilderment on my end and rage on theirs. He said before I could reply that I either choose not to notice things that ought to be seen or I am blind. He stated I had most likely become somewhat proud ever since I bought a property and avoided looking at the individuals who really mean something to me. I groaned and asked him what he meant by all of that, wanting that he would be more explicit. He blew sarcastically, then informed me I wasn't disturbed by the dire circumstances in the room. He stated I had elected not to offer or be of any kind of assistance and that I had chosen not to notice the family was in risk. I obviously asked him what risk he meant. Glancing across at Ash, who rolled her eyes and declared she was pregnant. Like any other person, I wanted to congratulate her, but she started crying before I could. Marissa hugged her and advised me to be concerned enough to find out what's happening at home. Dad stated Ash recently discovered she was pregnant, and the lad who caused it had broken up with her since. Marissa also mentioned that Ash has decided to maintain it, hence our basis for next decisions should be based on that. Can she afford it? All I could say. Ash and Marissa stared death at me. To be honest, I meant good. I was worried. I was actually ready to help her, but in my thoughts I had already imagined perhaps they wanted me to contribute financially. Dad then got up and moved over to my side to sit down with me. That's why he called me, he stated afterwards. He added that although maybe my mother neglected to educate me how to be a good brother, brothers would throw their life away for the comfort of their sisters. He said he is a nice parent to his daughter. I ask for your effing pardon. I'm not dying for her, but I know my financial input is required. I sighed and asked him what action he wanted me to take about it. He said, "That's my good boy," grinned, rubbed my back. I forced a phony smile, which vanished the instant Dad said, "You're giving Ashlyn your house." "No, I am not." Dad answered straight away. "Yes, that's what I said." Dad scowled and asked me why not. I told him I could help with some cash, but the house is mine. Until she can afford it, I can let her share a room free from rent. Dad got up from his chair then said, "Nonsense. Dad, it makes perfect sense to me." He insisted nevertheless, that I not only offer her the house but also move out and buy another for myself. I contended that if Ash is unemployed and expecting a kid, she cannot even afford to run the house or pay the expenses. Those, Dad informed me, would also be my obligations. Apologize to me? Hell to the number one. Though I was enraged, I had to be polite. Thus I got to my feet and informed him that it was not feasible and that I would now be departing. I then turned to go. He wasn't content to stop there. 1 week later, he turned up at my place when I was at work. I'm not sure how he entered or where he picked the keys from, but when I returned home I observed men loading boxes loaded with my belongings outside the house. Hurrying inside, I asked them what they were doing and they informed me the house owner had told them to toss the goods. I said that they should go right away and that I owned the house, they should get my belongings back inside. I lost my composure. Coming home, this was the last thing I would have predicted seeing. When I went inside to see Dad and Ash, they still stood there insisting I follow what brothers ought to do. They ignored my advice to leave, thus I informed them I will contact the police. They went at last, badmouthing me, applying curses and things. Though I know this is a lot to read, it was much worse in person. 1 week has gone by and I'm posting here since I kind of feel horrible about it. Was I in error? I feel like they need me and I shouldn't cut them off like this, but I also feel like my actions for them have limitations. Growing up, their disconnection and lack of concern for me infuriates me. Today, they ask me to lay my life down for them. Bit much, not sure what you mean here. Tell me, let me know. I couldn't even get my buddies involved in this. Right now you are all I have. Update. Hey everybody. I hope every one of you is good. I posted 1 week ago, and to be honest I didn't expect the attention it attracted. As the comments arrived, some made me doubt a number of things. Not too long afterward though, I decided not to break off my family completely. This came about via Ash calling me. I welcomed her by telling me she wanted to see me. She wanted to tell me a few things, therefore she asked to meet at my place, but I was still getting used to the scenario made last time. I urged us to meet somewhere else. She was first somewhat nervous when we visited a coffee shop. She seemed somewhat unlike herself, but generally she is rather conceited and unpleasant. She told me she had lately been broken off with as we sat in the corner. I answered, claiming I had an idea since Dad mentioned the man who got her pregnant had left her. She shook her head and said Dad believes that. She told me that although Dad believes her BF left her due to commitment problems, in fact she is the one with the commitment problems. Unbelievably, right? She said she truly loved this man, but he had discovered some things about her just a few days before she told him she was pregnant. She spoke first, therefore infuriating him even though he wanted to address her about those things. In that instant he became rather insane and drilled a hole in the wall. He frightened her, she claimed. He then said he was divorcing her and left without hearing her reply. She has been trying to phone him non-stop, but he hardly reacts. He has only once texted her back, advising her to let the child go first and inform him. He will only talk to her at all then, but she has to part from the child to have that opportunity. Now I know Ash ain't a saint, but this man. This person really bothers me greatly. She remarked it would be strange to tell a brother about the topics I just questioned her about. I shrugged and stated that it's okay if she doesn't want to tell me since I kind of realized she was most likely referring to the OnlyFans and escorting. She pulled in a great breath and let it out before I could ask her what she wanted to meet for. She then told me she had been engaged in dubious activities. Though I truly wanted to hear validation of all my doubts, I was concerned. She told me she wanted to paint and be an artist, but Marissa informed her she wouldn't get a decent life or income from it. Ash was advised she had to start looking for a man right now. She first felt disgusted as she soon enough began attracting the attention of elderly guys. She told Ash that it was a good thing when she informed Marissa about it. That is, the older males making any money at all, knowing what to do with their money. At the time Ash was just 19, and Marissa informed her college she would not or could not provide a decent, pleasant living. Ash had youth. Many would have paid for it. Ash resolved she wanted to be a model. She tried several modeling agencies but none seemed to be interested in her. She then ran into a man in his 40s claiming he could land her a job. He purchased her pricey outfits and jewels for the functions and drove her to gatherings. She was content till her first gig was mentioned. She turned out was selling her time to a man in order to pay for a modeling contract. She spent the evening as she assumed it would only be dinner. That was it. She did have a little modeling contract where she photographed a little brand. A few more men used her while she was hoping for a gig in exchange, but she was informed they chose not her. She then discovered that the man making investments in her was actually profiteering off of her. She was terrified he would have her killed, hence she considered it foolish to face him. She then informed him she was fine with low pay and that she no longer wanted to pursue modeling. He fortunately let her depart without any problems. She then attempted to wait tables in bars, and it proved rather difficult for her. Ash, hard-earned money is exactly what that is. Still, she also mentioned that Marissa would make fun of her for opting for those little tasks. Marissa would explain that women should be taken good care of. They are the beauty of this planet and should just be there to shine and smile like a showpiece. Etc. Ash thus began to go out with men just for supper, but she charged for it. She claimed that although many loners out there simply wanted interaction, too many ended up with stalkers and obsessive males believing they were owed more than what they had paid for. She started escorting when she realized that interacting with men and having them feel close to her caused more trouble than sleeping with them. It worked great until a friend mentioned OnlyFans. She tried to get it rolling, but her editing and camera handling were not particularly strong. She wasn't social enough, thus that didn't work either. It takes a lot of effort. She next ran across her lover, BF, an ex-coworker. He returned often because he worked as a barista. Though he was too clingy, she really liked him. He also lacked trust in her and was a bit possessive. Given that she was indeed still on OnlyFans and an escort under his unaware knowledge, he had every reason to question her. Her BF started looking after her with the meager income she made when she stopped escorting and left OnlyFans totally. She seemed good with it, Marissa wasn't. She then fell pregnant, and her boyfriend discovered everything. She mentioned that a couple of the individuals on the list might be possible fathers. Every one of them donated money to help the child and her. One of them had even proposed to her, but she knows all of them are doing since they believe they are the only ones there, which is silly given she is an escort. She does not, however, tell them straight out that she pays her expenses and most likely helps with the kid. She said she decided to tell me all this since she couldn't tell Dad. Dad believes she has only been modeling here and there, makes little money, and that she had one man in her life who left her. Marissa mostly understands when he should have stayed. She advises Ash to wed the man who proposed and let him believe he is the father. Ash doesn't know, though, what to tell Dad. She also doesn't want to let anyone believe a lie and wants not to wed the guy since he is strange and ancient. She mentioned that some financial support would be great and that she wanted me to make up with Dad. I asked her what she wanted me to help with. She advised me to consent to what Dad asked and then spend some time away. I could then return when things are less contentious. How then is that a solution? I politely turned down her offer and informed her I could only provide some money. Nevertheless, I wasn't comfortable leaving my own residence. She then informed me I lacked the least bit of decency to assist her out, that she exposed her entire existence to me and that I was selfish thinking like way. She stated, even then, Dad was correct about me and I deserved to be sent to an orphanage instead of taken in when I needed somewhere to live. She stood up and stamped off. Though I believe my response was not too severe, is it selfish? Actually, what do you believe her side of the tale tells? Does it support her expectations? Should I trust her? She seemed to be speaking the truth, but does it follow that I should follow her advice? Tell me, everyone. Update. Right now, this is what is picking at my brain. A few things have transpired after another week. I assumed I would hit the keys and notify you all about it. I appreciate your help on my earlier update, gentlemen. Having folks back up my ideas for once is rather relieving. Still, Dad called me once I met Ash. He wanted to meet with me at the pub to sort out a few things. Interested, I agreed and went to see him. He mentioned he knew how much I was making as we sat at the counter. When I questioned him about why it mattered, he stated he knew I could afford to buy another property in a few years. I shrugged and said I already had a house, thus this conversation ought to be quite over. He maintained that since I didn't yet have a family and that single women find it more difficult to raise a child. That child needed a safe place he could call home. I reminded Dad then, that Ash had been living with them long enough and that nothing seemed to be an issue. A small child won't harm. I also asked him what she would do, pregnant, living alone in a big house. She needs to be surrounded by others so that she could be looked after, I remarked. Dad surprised me once again at that point. He said Marissa and he would move in with Ash into my house. My hearing let me realize something. The bartender laughed sarcastically before I could react to that. Dad objected and inquired about what he found so humorous. He said, Ash. She uses everyone, he remarked, then tosses them away. He nodded, declaring he was her lover when my dad questioned him about who he was referring to. My eyes opened, so this was the man. Dad balled his fists and asked the man why he felt it was acceptable to establish a family he couldn't sustain. He spoke angrily. Holding his hands up, the man informed Dad he had no bearing on the family in issue. He also showed no desire in rearing a child not of his own. Dad pushed him to say why he felt that. He grinned and explained that although Ash still got pregnant, he had a vasectomy last year since he didn't want any children. He also discovered her driving off with several males following her lies on her whereabouts. Then he learned she had an OnlyFans page. He found none of it believable. That was the last straw for him when Ash at last told him they were expecting. He couldn't have a child, hence it verified everything. Knowing this, he told Ash she had been cheating on him all through. She let the truth fly free. While my ears were focused on Dad's voice, all I could see was his face moving from wrath to disbelief to disappointment. He shrugged and informed us she owed Ash money, time, honesty, at least love. He owed nothing else. He stated he was unsure whether Dad knew any of it, but he knew no dad would be ashamed of a child like that. Dad stiffened his lip, got off the stool silently, and turned away. He texted me later that evening, saying he had to go get Marissa from her yoga session. I'm not sure what happened after that, but I'm sure it was something as Ash was at my door sobbing the very following day. I wrecked everything, she informed me. To stifle a scene, I drew her inside and calmed her down. I told her I told Dad nothing. It was her boyfriend, the bartender Dad and I had visited. Then she told me Dad advised her to stay at home and stop everything. He claimed he never expected she would turn to such methods and felt disgusted by her. He advised her to pick a decent man and straighten her behavior. He also noted that these days her chances of meeting decent men were somewhat limited. I hugged her and listened to her. Dad had just returned from seeing me when he confronted her, so she stated she was sorry believing it was me. I forgave her, then she returned home. She added that Marissa was really quiet when Dad was discussing wonderful women and their loyalty, like she couldn't say anything, while she was raging and telling me how terrible she felt. Ash stated it's among the topics Marissa avoids talking about. She answered that Marissa couldn't have an opinion since she is yoga, so I asked her what she meant by that. I could only grimace in perplexity before Ash carried on crying as she related what else had transpired. Yoga, said stayed with me. Actually, what do you suppose happened? Will Ash still be Dad's pride source? Nobody has approached me ever since. Still, I will see and let you all know. I know y'all probably didn't expect me to get back to you so soon, but I couldn't help it. Update. 2 days after my last upload, and I am here for the ones inquiring. Although Ash's ex's name is not important, we may call him Bob. This is the fresh bit. I saw Dad the day before yesterday. I informed him I had some decisions made. I said I was ready to let Ash use a room and I wanted to assist raise her child. I would be fine paying for the diapers and other supplies, but she needs to start working right away. Dad informed me then that nobody would be with the kid, hence I advised her to attempt working from home or freelancing. This time, Dad wasn't his usual nasty self. He stopped and then let out a sigh. Telling me he felt I despised him, he settled on the couch. He was correct, but I probed him about his reasoning. Mom despised him too, thus he said, which was why. She never said that. I told him fast. Instead, she constantly stated Dad loved me and worried about me. I told him the only reason I felt let down at all was how inaccurate my view of Dad was. Mom told me all that. Then from Dad I sensed only absolute neglect and lack of caring. Rubbing his eyes, he confided in me he loathed himself for many ways. He stated he liked Mom, but they hadn't known enough to determine whether they were really each other's type. He sighed and added he had to marry her since he got her pregnant. Though he never felt the spark between them, she was a good wife to him. He next crossed paths with Marissa. I could feel my insides tingling at that. I remained motionless. None of this was known to me. Dad told me Marissa sparked a flame in him he never knew he possessed. He caught emotions before he knew it. He was quite delighted with her. Marissa became pregnant too before he could negotiate his way through rights and obligations. She was pregnant, therefore it was too late even if he informed her it was bad. He urged her to wait. He wanted to tell Mom first, but Marissa came to our house feeling nervous. She reported everything to Mom. She explained everything to Mom. Dad took it when Mom challenged him. Mom was really hurt in this quite unpleasant episode, yet even then she remained courteous and requested Dad for a divorce. My parents separated. Y'all, Dad had an affair with my stepmom and got her pregnant. I'm not sure just how much worse this dude could be. Dad stopped and glanced across at me. He stated he had to return me home after spending a good year with Marissa when Mom passed away. Marissa despised every aspect of it. Again, driven by guilt or something, she was worried that Dad could put me before their kid somehow. 3 years later, he sent me off to boarding school, and subsequently I never had to remain home long enough to cause Marissa any trouble. Love makes you do stupid things, he remarked, and I wanted to punch this man in the face but I restrained myself. Turning back, I found Marissa standing in the gateway carrying a water bottle. She claimed to be just heading to the yoga class. Setting her bottle on the table, she headed into the kitchen. I blinked, then she was back and was through the door before I could think clearly. Numb, hence I followed her out. I grabbed her water bottle to give back to her. She had already got in her car and was leaving when I came out. To help me to relax, I silently sat in my car and gently drove after her. She pulled out from parking outside a yoga club. She turned to glance around her and then began down an alley. She once more turned around and climbed into another car. She kissed and hugged the driver and they headed off. I was hardly able to blink. I locked my jaw, parked, got out, and entered the yoga club. When I asked them about Marissa checking in, they denied providing personal information. I insisted I was at least told if she were there, saying I was frightened about her. They informed me they had no customers under that name. I returned to my car and waited. I have no idea what came over me, but I started filming when the second car rolled in. Then slapped her butt as she happily headed to the parking lot when a man got out and opened her door for her, hugged her and kissed her. For yoga, Marissa, so much is different. I left before she arrived at the parking lot. My dad cheated on my mother, thus he is currently being cheated on as well. Karma is. Dad has phoned me several times, but I didn't answer. All I want right now is go and question Marissa about it, so I'm going to see what happens. Should I change? Hello y'all, I believe this to be most likely the last update. And I know it's a week late, y'all anticipated it to be sooner, but so much occurred this week. I first managed to man up and approach Marissa. I went when Ash was asleep and Dad was not home. Was she scheduled for yoga that day? She claimed to have it every day, on Sundays included. Cooking spaghetti in the kitchen, who was her yoga teacher? I asked her. She chose a name at random. Was that a guy? I asked her. Saying no, she chuckled and asked, why would I take a boy? She had a female instructor at the club she visited, so I told her it was odd since none of the other clubs had female instructors. She corrected me, but her voice startled me and her hands were no longer swirling the pasta sauce. They told me I had joined the club yesterday. I told her that. How could I know where her club was? She asked. I informed her I visited last time following her. She let go of a spoon. I grabbed it, and she spun around. What are you getting at? She asked. I then informed her what I observed. She disputed it as was natural. I mentioned I saw it with my own eyes. She shrugged and said Dad would never accept me. At least he would believe his own eyes, I told her after pulling out my phone and running through the footage. She stood stunned and spent a minute not speaking. Her face then relaxed, and she carried on cooking noodles. She stated it was useless now. She was already preparing for a divorce anyhow. My eyes grew wide. This woman was horrible. My dad deserved all of it, granted, but oh, she's a serpent. She informed me that her sweetheart of 3 years ago is the man she visits at the club. When it was safe to do so, they resurrected their passion. She stated they had fallen in love long ago, but at the time he was wed to another woman whose father had employed him for his business. Though there was a lot at risk, Marissa and her boyfriend decided he should keep his marriage intact and handle his money. He would then split from his wife and live with Marissa. But Marissa became pregnant and, as women should, she was trying to pin a man down for support. She made that decision to hang around Dad. They were seeing one another on and off, but Marissa chose Dad and told him he had to act when she met her boyfriend and got pregnant. She had to handle things herself since he developed cold feet, and that's when she spoke with Mom. She's good right now. Her partner is a widower and has a business. She said women should do what they can, kid, and turned around smiling. Her smile stopped though, as she peered over my shoulder. The next instant her smile vanished. I turned back to see Dad in the gateway with flaming eyes and clenched hands. He was shaking. Dad awakened Ash then and carried her to the kitchen. Who was her father? He asked. She shook her head and glanced across at Marissa. She assured him she always recognized him to be her dad, thus she didn't give blood any thought. Pacing the floor, he ran his fingers through his hair. Marissa and Ash were instructed to leave his house 2 days later. The divorce is underway. At a shelter are Ash and Marissa. Dad has requested me to locate him as a therapist, and he has been rather quiet since. I pardon him every single time. Regarding Marissa, her boyfriend didn't bring her in. He disputes having ever spoken with her. Marissa has begged me for the proof, I have it. She even begged me to consider Ash through her pregnancy. And what can I say, Marissa? Your child, your challenge? From what standpoint should I act? Either destroy the footage or hand it up. I'll let others know in the comments soon later. I appreciate you joining me and for your ideas and encouragement. It means a great deal. I exposed my wife's secret affair with my friend by printing every hidden message they sent each other. For the sake of the narrative, let's call her Mia. My wife, 26F, cheated on me, 27M, with a friend of mine, Jack. Background: We met at another friend's wedding when I was 22. She was the bride's friend, and I was the groom's friend. Therefore they seated us at the same table hoping we would cross paths. I was quite surprised by her beauty when I first saw her. We discovered we shared a lot when she sat down and we started to chat. We clicked right away. After supper, we lingered for a little before heading to the dance floor. Throughout the evening, we drank and danced. We ended up kissing in the center of the dance floor, and when we broke off, our friends, the bride and groom, came over to ask what was going on between us. Playing matchmaker made them really happy. We basically ignored it and proceeded on through our evening. We parted without sharing numbers, but approximately 1 week later I received a text from her asking me out. The bride had supplied my number. Of course, I answered yes and developed a relationship out of it. The relationship was excellent. Apart from little disputes, we never truly battled and it was never anything major. About 2 years into our relationship, I finally asked her to wed me. We were married less than a year later. Just before our first anniversary, we were married for a little more than a year when everything collapsed upon me. I could find small irritations in anything. Her phone got more guarded, girls' nights grew more frequent, and our sex life nearly non-existent. I had brought this up several times, but she dismissed it, saying I was letting my fears control me. She would carry on as though what I sensed and tried to express had no relevance to her. I grew much colder as a result. We seldom spoke unless it was something vital. I stopped kissing her goodbye as I headed to work. I grabbed her phone and laptop one night while she slept, skimming her texts, emails, and messenger apps but found nothing. Inspired by stories on this site, I decided to investigate her car. I noticed a second phone as I reached for her keys and glanced in her car. Though I knew right away what was happening, I wanted all the proof for when I called her out. She should not have spoken anything like that, something which had only happened once or anything dumb like that. Searching the phone, I discovered just one number. I linked the phone to my computer, went over every note and printed every message along with every picture. I looked at divorce lawyers late tonight. Reading profiles of lawyers for hours in my home office, I came upon one that appealed to me and emailed him. But because it being a Saturday, he wasn't at the office. Then I wanted to find out who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, entered the number and was prepared to claim I was from Spectrum since who doesn't have Spectrum. Jack's contact then suddenly showed up though. It took me a minute to arrange 2 and 2 together, but I blew up when I did. In my workplace, I was screaming and berating. My wife entered the door to check on me. Upon seeing her, I advised her to get the fuck out. She went to our room and locked the door. I had never raised my voice over a reasonable level or cursed at my wife. I silently raged from my office all day, just staring at the wall. I asked if he would come with me after phoning one of my friends, the wedding's groom, to let him know I needed to get a drink. He inquired whether I was all right, so he must have detected something in my voice. I admitted to him I truly wanted a drink and I wasn't. I gathered all the printouts silently and headed to the bar. Arriving first, I ordered 4 Jack pictures along with a beer. As my friend Ted came and inquired about what was going on, I was on my last shot. Mia was cheating, I told him right out. He showed me sympathy. I inquired whether he wanted to know with whom. He seemed clearly agitated when I told him it was Jack. He was the one first introducing Jack to me. All he could say was, "I'm sorry," over and over. Jack and I have never been quite close. Although we wouldn't invite one another to hang together, we were friendly if we happened to run across each other at a get-together. Having just discovered this and hadn't even spoken to Mia or a lawyer yet, I advised Ted not to discuss this with anyone. If his wife questioned what was wrong with me, I advised him to tell her I was having trouble at work. He concurred. Most of the evening we drank and chatted. Then, at approximately 3 in the morning, I got an Uber and headed home. Since I phoned Ted, it was the first time I checked my phone. There were missed calls and a lot of texts from Mia, asking where I was, when I would be home, and whether I was okay. When I got home she was curled up on the couch napping. I simply went to sleep walking up to our bedroom. She was in bed when I woke up, so I got ready and left the house. I went to pick up my car, head to my office and buried myself in work for the day. About 10 o'clock, I headed home. My wife surprised me by showing up to welcome me and mentioning she had dinner. "Would you like her to heat it?" she inquired. I turned her down and went to bed. Not far behind, she questioned me about what was wrong. I said I wanted to sleep and she should leave me alone. She persisted till finally I snapped and cried, "Mia, stop. I should be asleep right now, leave." The attorney emailed me the next morning requesting a later in the day meeting. I confirmed and prepared for my day. Mia had made breakfast and asked to chat when I walked downstairs to head out. I prepared a small plate and settled in. She began by noting that I had been acting differently and then went on and on mentioning my changes and asking why. I informed her that work had been demanding and that it will soon be all done. I told her I had to go after finishing. Counting down the minutes till I could see the lawyer, I headed to my workplace. I informed my assistant I was leaving to lunch with a customer. I left as my wife occasionally would call my work. The legal meeting went smoothly, and I turned over all the material I had collected on her. "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on," the attorney said. "But I'm glad you acquired all this material. You see, most of your money your wife has no claim on since we live in a no-fault state." I told him I had not given that any attention. I was only thinking I should divorce her right now. He insisted on keeping the proof, but I told him I would rather he simply create duplicates as I hadn't told my wife yet and I wanted to avoid hearing her justification. He agreed and had his assistant copy made. "When would she be served the papers?" I asked. He advised me it would take 2 weeks. I thanked him then and headed off. I headed home to face my wife. She wasn't at home when I got there, so I phoned. None of it. I got back on the line. No response. I texted her, "If you're with Jack right now, I don't give a fuck. Arrive home. We must have a conversation." Not a minute later, she called me, not sure what I was talking about. I told her simply, "Get home now." About 15 minutes later, she showed up. I said to her, "Wow, look at that. 15 minutes? That's around the same distance between here and Jack's, not sure exactly." She turned to face me, stunned. She was just staring at me after I gave her a minute to calm down. "Well?" I asked. "Not much to say here." I let her carry on while she tried to gaslight and deny me. She got herself up and began to disparage me. To silence her, I pounded my hand on the table and drew out the proof. "Look at this mountain of things I've gathered on you," I remarked, showing it to her from the side. I then went through one printout at a time showing her. She told me to stop immediately and started to cry. She told me she loved me and tried to apologize. "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before? Just a minute ago, you were rather determined about denigrating and attacking me." I put my hand out and said, "Don't touch me," as she wanted to hug me and apologize. She suggested we could go to the bedroom and do whatever I wanted. Looking her squarely in the eyes, I said, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Who else has these pictures and messages? You wish to know? My attorney. I am divorcing you. Now get a bag, sort your clothes and leave my house fuck free." That was 3 days ago. I haven't heard from her since. I apologize for the length of this and any spelling mistakes. For people who have been where I am at, what can I expect from here? I appreciate you looking over this. You all gave me a lot of advice after I uploaded the first section of this, so I mostly followed it. I meant to conduct some damage control in my life this morning, hence I made a doctor's appointment to be examined for STDs. 2 days from now is that appointment. I then began calling every person close to me. My father and a few pals. They have all been quite helpful, providing their own guidance and inquiring as to if I require assistance with any one thing. But I turned it down since I had this garbage locked on. I then got on to calling her family. Thanking them for letting me into their family, I emailed her mom and dad saying I was appreciative of all they had done for me. But I told them I will really miss them tremendously since Mia and I are divorcing. Not really. They were somewhat smothering, and even if they are wonderful people, I'm glad I'm free from dealing with it. I next advised them to feel free to ask questions should they have any. After not getting back from them for some time, I turned to Mia's sister. This kind of hurt since I knew it would sour her sister's friendship and we were excellent friends. Saying, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to text you this, but Mia and I are going to get divorced and I wanted you to know. I want to thank you. You embraced me as a brother right from the beginning. I will be here should you ever need anything from me." Her parents answered back at the same moment I sent the SMS. The dialogue proceeded as follows. Parents. We regret learning of this. Whatever happened? Why has Mia not spoken to us? Mia has been in an at least 1-year-long affair. I suppose it began before our wedding. She hasn't gotten in touch, and I'm not sure why, but you should phone her. She went from the house. She would have gone to you, I reasoned. Parents. We have not heard from her. We'll give her a call. Thank you for informing us. Are you really positive she was having an affair? I'm upbeat. Parents. We're really sorry she did that. You found their books. We will try and contact her. I took care of her family, then went on to Jack's fiancé. I know it was mentioned in some of the comments. I'm not sure whether I told you all he is engaged in the first section. I assumed this would be challenging, that Mia and Jack would have hatched some grand plans, But either Mia didn't tell them I discovered or they are just morons. About 2 o'clock, I texted her and asked whether we might get together for something like coffee. She accepted around 2:05, and instructed me to meet her at some terrible hipster coffee shop across from her workplace at 2:30. Arriving first, I ordered my awful coffee and waited a few minutes. She arrived and joined me after walking in. Placing her order, I said to her, "I'm simply going to blurt it out. Jack has been cheating on you with my wife. There's no simple way to say what I'm about to tell you. It has been going for almost a year." She seemed clearly startled, so I told her I'd only learned a few days before. I know I ought to have told her then, but I had a divorce to start and my own pity to cope with. She inquired about my source and I responded with everything covered in the first piece. Then I brought out a binder and asked whether she would want to view the material I had collected. She took the binder, quickly went over the photographs and notes, and then began to weep softly. She is more than welcome to grab the binder. Extra copies if she wanted to confront Jack with it or check whether he would lie. She thanked me, got up, picked the binder and let me know whether she needed anything from me. She nodded her head and left, obviously demoralized. I know you all advised me to keep a level head, stay sober and whatnot. Yet my world collapsed on top of me. This week I'm going to sit on my rear porch, drink, smoke cigars and blare music. I'll stop feeling bad about myself after this week and resume my regular calendar. More positively, I have already packed most of her belongings, clothing, jewelry, etc. I also threw every picture with her in our wedding book into the crates. I want her here no more than she needs to be should she return for her items. Besides a few picture frames, nothing is shattered. Before you ask, no, I didn't ruin her clothes. Right now, nothing else is happening. I told everyone I ought to have told. 90% of her stuff is in boxes. My doctor's appointment is set. My lawyer is hard at work trying to get me out of this crap. I truly have no idea what remains. Should she stay out of my life, this may be the simplest divorce ever. I appreciate you looking over this. One values advice constantly. Update 2. Hey everyone. I'm sorry I missed in action for a little and didn't reply to comments and mails, but I believe I caught up now. Regarding the update, I have been enjoying my pity party, drinking, and even more drinking since the previous time. Since I discovered everything and can't really put into words how I feel, this is probably my first semi-sober moment. I suppose numb is a good word. I told everyone all I informed them in the last post. The only one not responding was Mia's sister, from whom I was rather close. After writing the update, that evening I carried on my drinking spree, passed out on my back patio with a bottle and several beer cans all about, and woke up to the fragrance of breakfast cooking. Oh Christ, Mia came back and thinks breakfast is going to make up for what she's done, I first thought. Surprised, let's name Mia's sister Emma, I built myself up into a fury, flung myself from the chair, ready for a yelling match. Emma hurried to me and wrapped her arms around me when I stood there momentarily attempting to cool myself. She realized I was awake. She said nothing. She just took my hand, walked me to the table, and set a plate in front of me. She told me how sorry she was while I ate and that when her sister showed up at her place she simply stated that we were having issues and that everything would be good in a few days. She then informed me that when I texted Mia regarding the divorce, she asked Mia, if it's fine, why is he divorcing you? Mia apparently simply broke down and told Emma everything. I laughed and added, there's no way she told you everything, then went on to relate all that had happened. Emma informed me Mia had indicated it was only one time and I was exaggerating it. Emma was here wasting her time since I told her I had no intention of getting back together with Mia. I also advised her to let Mia know she should get a lawyer if she gets in touch with her. Emma chuckled and remarked she was here for me, not for her sister. She told me she would be there for her sister naturally, but that she and I are friends and she wouldn't forsake me, particularly if I did nothing wrong. I got up, moved to her side of the table and just gave her a hug. Hearing her say that made me feel so much better since I was so concerned that all this crap would sour our friendship. Emma left this morning as I was getting ready to head to my cabin. She remained with me for 2 days in the guest bedroom. I had it before the marriage, thus Mia cannot touch it. She asked if she might join me as I was assembling my hunting and fishing gear, but I told her as much as I would want. She should most likely go check on her sister. She hugged me, agreed, and walked off. Emma is really appreciated for being there for me. Before any of you claim she's into me, she isn't. She is also 20, and for me that is far too young. Simply said, it's a very close friendship. I nearly forgot to mention that I visited a doctor, underwent tests, and should get results on Monday. A couple times I have personally contacted Jack's fiancée to just check on her. She says she's good but she has no idea what to do. I'm more than happy to listen if she wanted to meet any time next week so she could rant. I really appreciate all the appreciation you have given me as well as reading, getting in touch. In my life, you all have been a lighthouse during a somewhat dark period. The only thing I can advise any of you experiencing this is I am to put your head down and concentrate on what you truly want. Whether it's reconciliation or divorce, make one at a time goals. For me, it was lawyer first then doctor, telling all those close. Keep it off of the internet though. Set time also to release your emotions. Thank you once more. Apologies. These updates always seem so long. Update 3. I discussed Emma visiting my place and spending several days in my prior post. She left when I was headed hunting from my cabin. Positively, I scored a buck, a good, big 8-pointer. I'm very glad I acquired him on my first day out as it allowed me the remainder of the time to go fishing. I fixed one dinner and killed the other since I only caught 2 but they were good size. I stayed at the lodge cleaning my deer and savored the natural surroundings throughout. Apart from 2 glasses a day, I traveled sober as promised. My drinking was just for last week. On to the last couple days now. My doctor called and I'm all clear. Though Mia and I haven't had much enthusiasm in a few months, it's not really shocking. All the same, you never know. I contacted Jack's fiancée but didn't hear back for some time. She answered finally, saying she is currently staying with her family. She didn't really go into great depth, but her being with her family, you could only guess as I do, that things are not going so well. At least she's with family, protected, and with all the help she might require. All she needs to do, I reminded her, is reach out, if there is anything I can do. Naturally, I accepted when she invited me to meet and get coffee the next day. We convened at the same horrible hipster coffee shop the following day and spent almost 2 hours chatting. We discussed all that Mia and I had gone through. She wanted to know if I was divorcing, if I would be reconciling, or what steps I was following. In my book, I informed her, that's it after someone cheats. The degree of selfishness and disdain required to cheat, let alone for a year, showcases clearly her lack of concern for me. What was her plan? I questioned her. She confided in me that she is perplexed about everything and that all she believed to be factual turned out to be lies. Whether to go on or to forgive him, she wasn't sure what her next action should be. You're a better person than me if you can forgive someone for cheating on you for that length of time, I advised her. She told me all of her family was advising her to forgive him and then get married. Just because it's what your family wants doesn't mean you need to follow along, I advised her, being direct. Then I said, Jack cheated on you, his fiancée, with my wife. He clearly doesn't give marriage and what it all implies any thought. Should that not convince you he is not marriage material, I am not sure what else does. I advised her to follow her moral compass and not let anyone else except herself make choices impacting her life. When I found out, all I could do was consider how my heart could fool my head into thinking of some way I could accept it and forgive Mia, but I just could not do it. I claimed too that I only spoke with one individual, but that I had already decided and that nobody could change my mind. When you stayed with your family, you had a very decent notion of what you were going to do, but you let too many people in and they all interpreted it any way they wanted. I ended by telling her all she had to do was trust her gut. Her heart and brain will constantly lie to her. If her gut senses something is odd, 9 out of 10 times her gut is most likely accurate. She said thanks, and we headed home separately. My lawyer messaged me the next day saying Mia had been served successfully at her place of employment. I appreciated all of his work, particularly in relation to the timescale he has achieved. Emma called not long after that to inform me Mia has stayed in her room all day and is crying in bed. Mia was served, and she is most likely realizing how terrible she screwed up. Emma wanted to know whether I had anything and how the cabin was. I told her all I did and how my stay went. We spoke for a little then hung up. I then got ready and cleaned my house for her response. Given her recent serving, I reasoned that she will burst shortly, given that she has time. I am thus calmly waiting for it now. I have Advil on hand for what I would guess to be a little headache. When I informed a friend he nodded. Should Mia show there, he would dash over to act as a witness, should all else fail. I'm writing right now, awaiting Hurricane Mia to rip through my house. Should she or when she does, I will forward another update. I appreciate each of you reading. Update 4. About an hour or so after publishing yesterday, I was waiting for Mia to show up at the house and go ballistic. Though given all that has happened, I never truly knew the woman. I had no real reason to believe she would behave. I checked every camera I had set up, inside and outside, to make sure they were running as they should. Telling my friend that Mia was served today, I told him he should get to my place right away should she show up. Thanks to this woman, I am not going to jail. Turns out I was correct since Mia arrived at the house screaming to allow her in and banged on the door. Mia was pounding on my door, so I called Emma and my friend right away to get here. She was shouting every name in the book, berating my name, imploring me to allow her in and wondering how I could be so callous. She's not incorrect, as all I could do throughout the time she was screaming and pounding on the door was giggle. Then I questioned why she didn't just stroll in since, at least from what I knew, she still carried keys. My friend arrived still screaming and cursing, so he started to record on his phone and stayed in his truck. But these morons brought Mia's buddy, his wife, with him. She thus came out and aimed to cool Mia down. She approached Mia, arms around her, attempting to get her to talk, but Mia then slapped her across the face, shouting at her to mind her own business. That led my friend, who now has a video of it, to call the cops. Till the cops arrived, Mia kept screaming and cursing. She put much effort on portraying the victim when they did. She started to weep and tell the two cops I hit her and threw her out of the house. Mia was yelling and pounding on the door when my friend and his wife arrived at the house, so they verified that I hadn't followed her advice. Officer was done chatting with my friend and his wife, then he came to my door. Mia remarked, "There, that's him," when I opened it. "He struck me. I want him taken into custody." I told the officer I could prove she was lying to him, all I needed, so she started to put me in cuffs. Stopping, the officer instructed me to show him the view captured on the exterior cameras. Having seen the video, he said he was sorry for presuming I was the one in error and for drawing snap judgments. I told him I didn't blame him, but he then informed me my neighbors had called them 15 times overall, and allegedly Mia had yelled out, "He hit me," during her outburst. Thus the cops had rendered their decision already. Mia spent around half an hour dealing with the police before being charged with disturbing the peace, public intoxication, and a DUI and being placed in handcuffs. Emma showed up and came to me inquiring what had occurred as the cops drove her to the car. I played her the entire video on my phone. Then the officer came up to give me some extra documents and the case number. Emma started to probe the charges, so I returned inside. Emma came right behind and sat behind me. She informed me she had left her house for 10 minutes to run to the store, but when she returned Mia was no longer in the living room, so she assumed Mia had gone to bed after too much alcohol. After some time of conversation, Emma requested whether she might spend the night with me. She was always welcome whenever, I said. She informed me Mia had to stay the night in jail. I'm not sure why, but they may get her released early in the morning. Emma doesn't have that type of money, thus she told me when I returned inside she called her parents to let them know what was occurring and to see whether they could bail Mia out. We shared a beer and shortly went to bed. Emma had already left to see her folks when I got up in the morning. Though I haven't heard from Mia, Emma, or their parents, I wouldn't find it to be a lively discussion. Update 5. Since that evening, I haven't heard from Mia, but my lawyer received calls from hers informing him he will be representing Mia. At last we may begin this process. I also asked Jack's fiancée whether she had any updates on her front. We only chatted back and forth, but she informed me she kicked him out of her house and had her father and brother pack everything and drop it at his house. She stated she just wanted to put all this behind her and go on. Her dad and brother wanted to beat him, but she urged them not to. She said her close friends are available for her when she needs them and thanked me for checking on her. I emailed her the link to my Reddit page so she could view all the help you all provide her and to her. Friday, the instant I left the office, I ran home. I had intended to spend the weekend back in my cabin. Emma was in my driveway when I showed up. She had a list of what my wife expected and intended to obtain from her sister. I quickly went over it and all except one object was already in a box or sitting in my garage just waiting to be picked up. I informed her I'm not carrying or touching anything from here. I want to avoid liability should Mia wish to claim I damaged her belongings. Right now I'm heading to my cabin and don't have time to deal with Mia's crap, so I told Emma I would pay for a moving company to come and box all her stuff. That would be fantastic, she added, and hoped I enjoyed myself. She piled a box of Mia's clothes in her car. Then she turned to me and asked whether she may tag along this time. Sure, why not go back home, drop off the box and pack a bag for yourself, I asked. She was dragging up by the time I headed to the shop and loaded the truck. I shut my house and started Emma toward the cabin. The weekend turned out rather perfectly. I understood what a gem that location is when I was last visiting there. It is totally secluded and has a great perspective, thus I am free from dealing with people. Here you may really rest and breathe in. I phoned a moving firm on Monday, and by Tuesday 3 men in a large truck pulled up and began loading. As they closed the box and picked it up, I had every box opened. As the movers loaded all the furniture, I photographed every piece. I tipped each of them an extra $50 and thanked them all for letting me live. I then proceeded on with my day and submitted all the recordings and photos to my lawyer. The house looks empty yet also spotless without all her possessions. My lawyer advised me not to throw away anything that would be deemed shared when I started this process, hence I kept most of the furniture in a storage facility. Since she departed, I have been sleeping in the guest room. So, up until I started writing this piece, I had been shopping for entirely new furniture. Now that I have the garage, I most likely will be storing most of the stuff there. Even if I win the house in the divorce, it has too many negative memories, thus I won by not keeping it. Update 6. My last post was quite some time ago. Between finishing this divorce, handling my soon-to-be ex, and coaching these children, I don't have much free time at the moment. Quite a lot has transpired, hence this may be a long post. Please be patient. A few days after the movers delivered her items to Mia, my attorney received some documentation stating I damaged her items and that I would pay her $1,500 or she would be bringing me before court over it. Asking exactly where the damages she claimed I caused, my lawyer sent hers all the footage and images. All this does is tell the judge how unhinged she is, and it might be a headache now, but when it's time for court, this will all be perfect evidence, he said. Her attorney wasn't prepared for my level of meticulousness or for me photographing and recording everything. I was, for some reason, pulled to this page and read all of the horror stories of the things people's previous husbands did to them when I learned of my wife's affair. I absolutely refuse to be another one of those stories. I wouldn't put anything past her at this point. I have practically every consequence and accusation she could make ready for her. Mia had called once every other day, but I never answered. I merely forward her voicemail to my lawyer. I don't bother listening to it if she left one. Every time I forward my attorney something, he always tells me, "You are a wet dream for a lawyer. You pay attention to everything I say. On your own, you compiled a mountain of proof." I have not yet had a customer that has done so brilliantly. When I mentioned, he says that every time, he wasn't exaggerating, but it makes me smile. Having that confidence from him that I'm doing everything right helps me to feel somewhat better about the whole circumstances. My lawyer informed me roughly 2, maybe 3 weeks ago that we have enough proof to bury her outside of court. Should it fail, it would reflect well on us for efforts. We thus scheduled a meeting in a neutral lawyer's office a week ago. He advised me before we met, don't react to anything Mia might say. No matter what. Should it go before court, everything we do would be noted for a judge to review. Early in the morning we arrived and headed into the workplace. She was already there waiting with her lawyer, shockingly. When we arrived, the lawyers began chatting to one another. Silent sitting there, Mia and I waited for what was to come. Mia's attorney began by inquiring about our offerings. Mine laughed and declared, "With a mountain of proof of the affair and Mia's inappropriate behavior later, the only thing we'll offer is half of the selling price of the house and half of the savings account. That beyond what any court would award. You will be departing with basically what you entered into the marriage with." He then turned straight toward Mia and said, "If you choose to go to court, I will publish every message, making you read it all out loud. I will then post every picture up for all in court for viewing and ask you to meticulously explain what you are doing in each one. Then I'll mention your most recent accusations and show the footage captured that evening." Looking at me, Mia started to cry and asked whether she could do anything to right this. "You have been cheating on me since before our marriage?" I remarked. "I can only show a few weeks before the wedding. I imagine there was far more. Nothing at all could possibly help me to forget or pardon you for what you have done. Sign the paperwork. It's more than you deserve and I want to be done with this whole hoax you produced." She had to excuse herself to the bathroom and shed terrible tears for 15 minutes. She still was in tears when she got back, but she signed the paperwork and left not long after. Everything will be filed in roughly 1 month, hence all I will have left to do is sell the house. I appreciate everyone reading and all of your wise counsel. Though I could be mistaken, I do not see anything else occurring. Should it, I will let you know. But most likely this will be my last post, hence once again, thank you everybody. I hope what occurred to me benefits at least one person else out there. My fiancée revealed she's bisexual after a solo wedding trip and now everything's falling apart. Original post August 10, 2024. Betty, 27F, and I, 30M, got engaged in January after dating for a couple of years. Our plan was to get married next year when we had saved enough money for the wedding. Shortly after getting engaged we moved in together at the end of January. In May, Betty was a bridesmaid for one of her friends. I was unable to attend due to my job and the fact it was a 5-day trip. Betty had a great time reconnecting with some of her old friends, but a couple of weeks after she got back she became moody and withdrawn. I was relieved when she made an appointment with a therapist since she hadn't opened up to me about what was troubling her. After about 5 or 6 sessions, she sat me down one Saturday morning so we could talk. Betty had been raised in a very conservative household and had to suppress her desires until she moved out to go to college. Even then, certain ideas she denied and refused to embrace. At the wedding, she was introduced to the wife of one of her girlfriends from college, and it triggered a lot of repressed desires over the days they all hung out before the wedding. She told me she felt romantic and sexual attraction to women as well as men and realized she was bisexual. I told her I was happy she finally felt safe in sharing this with me, and it didn't change how I felt about her. It was a very emotional moment. She asked me how I felt about her exploring her sexuality now that it was out in the open. I said I was open to exploring it with her and possibly having a threesome with another woman to let her have that experience. She wanted a one-on-one experience with another woman and felt she couldn't do that with me. I told her that sounded more like an affair and something I wasn't comfortable with. I asked her if she wanted to cancel the wedding and maybe separate while she figured out what she wanted to do. She was adamant that was not what she wanted, and she was still very much in love with me and still wanted to get married, but she felt like she had to explore these feelings she was embracing before we settled down together. I asked her if she had done anything inappropriate at the wedding and cheated on me. I asked if she had someone in mind or had been talking to someone since she came back. She admitted to dancing with a girl at the reception and they kissed at the end of the night, but nothing else happened. But she denied talking to anyone or pre-planning anything. She knew this was a lot to throw on my plate all at once, and she didn't expect an answer right away. She just asked that I keep an open mind and keep talking about it. I couldn't promise anything, but I agreed to do some research and talk to a workmate that has an open marriage to see how they cope. I did warn her if I found out she lied or was doing anything behind my back, there would be no second chances and I would leave. My workmate has been super helpful and open about their relationship. My brother got me into a support group that has helped me come to terms with our relationship changes. I'm burning my way through my second book and sat Betty down Thursday night to check in and talk about moving forward. I found a couples therapist, I gave her the book I had finished, and I told her we should postpone the wedding for 6 months and then decide if that's the path we are still on. I was on a roll when she stopped me and asked me if I was planning on dating other people. Like that never occurred to her that I would be dating as well. She kind of shut down after that, barely giving one-word answers when I would ask her something. I think the longest sentence I got was, "I just don't know." She has been like that for 24 hours now, like she is lost in a fog. I'm just bracing myself for the inevitable flood of emotions. I would have thought she would be happy that I was considering opening our relationship. Add-in, my brother came out as gay when I was 16 and my parents were very supportive, so I grew up in a very different household than my girlfriend. Apology, the second half of my post was written much later than the first half, and after a few drinks. Rereading it made it clear I should have waited till this morning before posting it. Sorry. Update. Saturday night her fog lifted and things got pretty heated. She said that the open relationship was my way of punishing her and being vindictive by dating other women. She was just asking for some grace to explore her feelings. I replied that she showed almost no remorse for cheating on me and instead expected an open-ended hall pass to do so again. I told her our friends had told me she asked them not to say anything about what happened at the wedding, so I would probably never know the full truth and just had to accept it was worse than she admitted to. I asked if she thought it was fair to go have sex with other people while I waited by the door like some lovesick puppy who was expected just to wag his tail when she decided to come home and show me some attention. It devolved after that, and some hurtful things were said by us both. I finally gave her 3 options if she wanted to move forward. Monogamy, postpone the wedding and go to couples counseling. No experimenting. When we get to a good place, then go ahead with the wedding with a prenup to protect me if she changes her mind and/or cheats again. Open relationship. We can both date who we want and she can figure out her sexuality on her own terms. In a year or so we can see if marriage still seems like a good option if we are still together. Full separation. She moves out and we can each be free to live our lives as we see fit. If when she decides she wants monogamy with me if I haven't moved on, then we can try option #1. But it would be a new beginning, not just picking up where we left off. She decided she needed some space to think things out and is going to stay with friends for a couple of days. I told her before she left that if she accidentally cheated while she was gone to not come back except to pick up the rest of her things. This morning I got a text from her, "I'm so sorry." She didn't answer when I asked her what she meant and my call went to voicemail. I'm not going to reach out to her again and I will wait to let her contact me when she is ready. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Looks like your partner has been a bit self-centered about this. Good idea to take your time regarding your engagement. The death of exclusivity, even as a hypothetical, can be a pretty destabilizing thing for an established mono relationship. Keep talking. You seem to be handling this very well, somewhat better than her I think. OP, I tried to handle this respectfully, but it seems fair to her as an open pass for her but not for me. I'm expected to support her while she has sex and possibly develop feelings for someone else and just smile and nod. And then she got upset when I had to remind her she was the one that cheated. I just finished printing out cards to send to everyone. We sent the save the date notices to advise them we are canceling the wedding. Not sure how I'm going to respond when they start asking why. The cards I'm sending out just have due to new circumstances on them. Comment 2. If the person asking is part of the group who withheld information from you, consider telling them the truth, that your fiancé cheated on you and her friends colluded to keep it from you. Consider telling that friend what you think of them for not having your back at such an important moment. OP, I had that conversation with the friend who confirmed what Betty had told me. When I questioned him later, he said Betty had made them promise not to tell me on the trip back home. He and his wife and one of the other bridesmaids were the only ones that saw them kissing. He also told me who the other woman was. She lives in a different state. Update August 18, 2024. Previously, my fiancée announced she was bisexual and had made out with a woman at her friend's wedding. On Wednesday, Betty went to her previously scheduled appointment with her therapist and told her what happened between us. Not sure what all was said, but she called me on the way to her friend's house apologizing for some of the things she said and wanted to come home and talk things out. I told her to stay at her friend's house tonight and think about what she wanted, and she could come home Thursday and we could sit down and work things out. On Thursday, we met at the house and talked over dinner. We both apologized for getting heated and saying some unfair things to each other. After talking to her therapist and having several conversations with her best friend over the last few days, she has decided not to explore her bisexual urges. The idea of a truly open relationship where I was free to sleep with other people terrified her, and getting married was more important than chasing the rainbow. Her original idea had been just a free pass to see if she was missing something in her life and how important it was to her. I asked what she was asking for an ONS, just dating a woman, or having a full relationship. She couldn't tell me exactly what she wanted. I said that didn't sound very monogamous to me or very fair. She agreed, and that was why she was giving up on exploring those feelings. Next, she brought up the notes I sent out canceling our save the date notices for our wedding day. She said she was getting all kinds of calls about what happened and was caught unaware about what they were even talking about at first. She was upset that I did that without talking to her first. I reminded her that she loved 2 grenades in my lap, coming out as bisexual, and that she cheated on me, then left and wouldn't talk with me except for a cryptic, "I'm so sorry" text followed by silence. While I never said anything other than we were having issues and had to postpone the wedding, evidently there was speculation that she had cheated on me. She switched gears and said we could still get back on track and get married next spring. No, because now when one of us is out of town, my mind will be thinking about you cheating again, especially after coming out and wanting to have an affair to explore your sexuality. I said maybe after couples therapy we could get back to a good place again, but not by the end of the year, and it would be foolish to start planning and making financial commitments before we even knew if therapy was going to work. Plus, I wanted a prenup to protect everything I brought into the marriage as well as my future retirement savings. Plus, she would forfeit any equity if we bought a house. When she protested, I said if you plan to be faithful and not change your mind later, then it would never be a thing. Just something to give me some peace of mind. It's been an ongoing conversation for the last few days. Betty wants to rug sweep the incident at the wedding and move forward with our wedding. Exploring her sexuality is not worth sacrificing our relationship, in her opinion. For now, we are back together and planning on counseling soon. In a post-clarity moment, I realize I rushed to embrace the idea of an open relationship to allow Betty the freedom to explore her new feelings, and I'm not as willing now to consider that option. I think separation is the better option, breaking up if you will, till we both decide what direction our future lies and if it is with each other. It's not what I want, but I also don't want to spend the next 3-5 years together only for her to change her mind or cheat on me one day. Relevant comments. Oop clarifies the chasing the rainbow comment and if he has a problem with her sexuality. Chasing the rainbow was her analogy, not mine. I didn't have a problem with her sexuality. The problem I had was she cheated. Granted, she only made out with someone and wanted permission to have sex with someone else. Male or female, that is unacceptable in what I thought was our monogamous relationship. Being bisexual doesn't give you the right to have sex with someone else while you're already in an exclusive relationship. It just means you are attracted to twice as many people. I do want to be with her and support her, but that doesn't mean I support her dating other people to explore her sexuality while in a relationship with me. OOP on the best scenario is breaking up. Most of the scenarios in my head end up in disaster. Breaking up and letting her find her center might be the best option. If in 3 6 months we both find we want to start over, then maybe it stands a better chance than us trying to just move forward the way we are now. But in 3-6 months I think I will have moved on to something less complicated. The fact that she thought I wouldn't be enough and had to go experience something different to fulfill herself could be a deal breaker for me. Final comment from OOP: we have counseling scheduled to see what is best for us. Until we firmly resolve this issue, we won't be getting married. I don't want to have to deal with cheating or her wanting to open the marriage years down the line and then possibly getting divorced. New updates. What a crappy week. Counseling started badly, walked into the office and saw a large pride flag on the wall. Our therapist was very biased towards my girlfriend's predicament. Glossed right over the cheating and into how I needed to better support Betty's awakening and support her journey to blah blah blah. Betty is the one who's confused and I'm not giving her a safe place to explore who she is. Nothing about my feelings or needs was addressed. To make matters worse, when the therapist was piling on me, I looked to Betty to stand up or say something positive for me and I got nothing. That part hurt me the most and I pretty much shut down for the remainder of the session. Toward the end, the therapist did try to engage with me because you could tell she knew had completely lost me. On the drive home, Betty tried to talk to me and I gave her the 3 answers I kept repeating to the therapist: sure, nope, and maybe. This was the therapist her individual therapist recommended us to. The next day I got a call from Betty's mom at my work wanting to know why we were postponing the wedding and that her family and friends had already started making plans. I told her she needed to take that up with her daughter. She kept badgering me until I finally told her Betty made out with someone at her friend's wedding and that was why things were on hold, and then I hung up on her. Less than an hour later I got a call from Betty demanding to know what I told her mom. I said you kissed someone at a wedding and we were trying to work through it and that I didn't mention Betty coming out to me. I told her she needed to sit her mom down and tell her the whole truth, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So I get this text from her mom telling me I need to suck it up and move past this and that I might even be at fault for not going to the wedding with her. Huge text giving me what for and trying to tell me what I need to do. I showed the text to Betty when she got home from work and said she needed to do something about her mom or I would enlighten her with the full story of all our problems the next time she tried to tear me a new one. Betty said she would handle her mom and made me promise to give her some time to tell her mom everything. Also this week Betty has gotten very protective of her phone. Yeah, major red flag. I went to charge my phone and unplugged hers to plug mine in and she almost flew across the room to practically snatch her phone out of my hand. I was able to sneak a look at her phone later while she was asleep, only to find she had changed her access code, something which she hadn't done since we had been together. I went online and looked at our phone bill and there were many lengthy calls to a Colorado area code, which I have found out is where the girl she kissed was from. I am just mentally exhausted at this point, the gaslighting, lying and just feeling like I am treading water all the time. Lately, when we've been intimate, there is a lack of passion in her that was there before all this. I feel love-bombed without the feeling. Feels like just hollow words and empty gestures. Tomorrow we are going to a cookout at her parents' house. I am going to try and keep my cool and not say anything, crossing my fingers. But when we get back I am telling Betty I'm done. I'll give her the choice of keeping the apartment or moving out. She will be free to explore and find what truly makes her happy, just won't be me. I came clean with my parents and a few friends about this whole mess. My tribe is ready to help support me and help with the move when I need them. Dad vetoed Mom's offer to move back home and said what I really needed was a new puppy, definitely too old to live with my retired parents. Feels weirdly peaceful now that I've made my mind up. To all of you who told me so, you were right, time to move on with my life. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I'd be tempted to leave a review on the therapist somewhere. Something short like, my fiancé cheated on me at a wedding and continues to call the person she cheated with, and this therapist told me I needed to support my fiancé's exploration of other people rather than addressing the betrayal. At the very least I'd want to make sure the therapist knew this would be why we wouldn't be coming back. Therapists can't improve without knowing when they've fucked up. And I guarantee you this therapist fucked up. Anyone in your personal life you tell about the infidelity, I'd recommend clarifying that it wasn't just a one-time thing and that she continued to call and have an emotional affair with the person. Sorry that your fiancé is literally actively having an emotional affair right this very moment, and the therapist you were sent to was the wrong choice. I wish you luck. OOP, I like your review but I am unsure where I would post it. Our therapist definitely had an agenda, but if we don't show up for the next session she already knows the reason. After browbeating me for most of the session she realized I checked out and spent the last 10 and 15 minutes trying to get me to re-engage. She tried to shake my hand as I left but I just silently got up and left her office. I haven't confronted Betty about the phone calls yet but I plan to ask her about them tonight before I tell her we are done. My family and friends, who I told yesterday, knows about everything, including the calls. For now anyway, my stress levels are surprisingly low now that I know what I want to do. My sister will be at my house when we get back and plans to stay at least the night while I tell Betty my decision. Update 3. Betty and I returned early from a cookout at her parents' house. I had planned for my sister to be at our house when we got back as a witness but had to wait a couple of hours for her to show up. I got us all in the living room and told Betty I couldn't do it anymore and was throwing in the towel. I said I had lost all trust in her and couldn't see a way forward and that the best choice was to just go our separate ways. Betty couldn't understand what I was saying and that she had been honest since her confession about what happened at the wedding. I asked if she had been in contact with the girl she kissed at the wedding and she denied it. I asked to see her phone and she refused, saying it would violate her privacy and the privacy of the people she had talked to. Fine, so who did you call with a 720 area code, and maybe I should call and see who answers? Doesn't really matter because it proves my point. I gave her a choice of moving out or staying and I would move out. I also said I would give her what she had contributed to our savings account for the wedding. She tried to get my sister to leave or get me alone to talk, but I told her I had been advised to have a witness present just in case. She went from crying to being angry, and after an hour and a half, she finally had a calm conversation about everything. We talked until almost midnight. This morning Betty decided to move back to her parents temporarily and the three of us packed up her things. While we waited for her dad and brother to come get her things, she tried to get me to go to a different counselor and give therapy another chance, but I said it was just a waste of time. I could never trust her again and that was no way to live. Not much of an ending. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Bloody hell. It's so hard to believe that your wife continued to lie to you to the very end. Can I ask that once she calmed down and talked until almost midnight, did she ultimately tell you the truth and confess everything she's been doing since that kiss? If so, how on earth did she try to justify to you all the lies she's been telling you? Or at least tell you why she has lied to you all this time? OOP. Girlfriend, not wife. She never did come completely clean. I think she is holding on to hope that I will change my mind. She is confused and conflicted. If she told me the truth, then I think she is afraid I would leave her for sure. Her words were, "I only hid things to protect your feelings." Comment 2. Have you spoken to her dad and brother? Or the friends that covered for her to see what she's been telling them and what they think of everything? I'd hate for her to paint you like the bad guy and claim this is all because of the kiss and not because of everything else. OOP. I did not talk with her brother or her dad when they came over. The friends that covered for her know almost everything from my point of view. Betty hasn't talked much with them since the wedding. The husband was especially upset that she had remained in touch with the woman she kissed, and his wife has been consoling, saying it was lucky I found out now rather than later. OOP on trying to save the relationship. At first I thought this was just a speed bump and something we could get past. But it became a sinkhole that just got deeper and deeper. I believe her first therapist got her started down the wrong path. But in the end she just became selfish and self-absorbed, which really turned me off. It kills me to think she threw away what we had and all the plans we had made. It was like she became a completely different person in such a short time. OOP on his relationship with her parents and changing the locks and the friends group. I had a great relationship with her family. It went south with her mom when I postponed the wedding. Her mom was all wrapped up in planning the wedding and was almost too involved. So when I pulled the plug, she took it hard, almost personally. I got everything changed but the locks, waiting on the landlord for that. Definitely culling some friends after this. Most of my core group have been pretty solid through all of the drama. More on cutting back the friend group. No, not completely. They are part of a larger friend group. I keep my distance but try to remain polite. The rest of the group knows they kept the secret from me and they have gotten some grief over it. They both have been remorseful and have supported me as things have played out. The wife was friends with Betty and still talks with her quite a bit. The husband and I were really close, but I don't engage much with him anymore unless it's in the group setting. Final comments from OOP. I dropped a box with some things of hers we missed and some of her mail at her work today. She wanted to talk and possibly meet for dinner to talk, but I told her we just need to move on and leave. I have blocked her on everything and just want to put everything behind me. Well, she's gone for good. All of her stuff is out of the apartment and she got her part of the money we were saving for the wedding. I've blocked her on everything and have no plans to contact her again. I don't need closure, apologies, or explanations. She has made several attempts to reach out to me through friends and at work. The people at work know not to bother me and don't even take messages from her anymore. The friends I politely tell why I won't take her back and they understand and drop it usually. I've had to block a couple of people who keep after me to talk with her. My boyfriend says coming in me is a boundary. What should I do? First of all, thank you all for the support. I tried to read almost every message and comment, but there were a lot, so it's hard. Some of you thought I was super naive, and I feel like I needed to just hear the truth straight up, and after posting and reading I decided to end it pretty quickly. Just for some context, our relationship other than this situation honestly hasn't been great either. We're different races and his parents don't accept me. He has strict Asian parents. He's extremely childish and immature, spends all day playing video games, and we do honestly constantly argue. The only thing that was good about our relationship was the sex part, and now that that's gone because of how he's acting, there's truly nothing good left in it. The plan was to break up with him as soon as he got home from work, and of course, today was the day that he was staying late at his job, and I just wanted to get things done and over with because it was eating me up inside. When he finally got home, he just ignored me, and part of me just wanted to ignore him back and not deal with it, but I knew what needed to be done. So I went to our room where he had been since he got off work. He was playing video games, and I told him that we needed to talk, which he rolled his eyes at. You guys said to be as direct as possible, so I told him that I was breaking up with him because he's manipulative and childish. Immediately you could see the change in his face from smug to scared. He asked if I was seriously gonna throw everything away because of a disagreement, and I told him it was bigger than that. He said if I wanted to leave him because I can't fulfill his needs, then to go right ahead. So I turned around to leave, and he said, "Wait." This is where I lost it. All the last months boiled over, and I said how manipulative and disgusting he was, all because he couldn't come in me for a little while. That he was a child, and if he couldn't figure out how wrong he was at 26, then there was no fixing him. I also told him how pathetic he was for putting on such a show by crying while watching porn just to try to make me feel bad. He said it wasn't a show, he just was upset that we were fighting all the time and he happened to be watching porn. He also doubled down by saying that coming in his woman is important, and brought up his boundaries again. And I told him how much bullshit that is and that he can't set boundaries on my body. We were both crying a lot. He then admitted that he acted this way to deter me from taking out my IUD. After that, I left to go to my parents' house, and he's tried calling and texting, all apologetic now, but I don't feel the need to ever talk to him again. I just discovered my husband has been telling his coworkers I'm his sister. What should I do? I need advice. Throwaway account because I don't use or understand Reddit, but I really need advice from someone not connected to me or my husband. My husband, I'll call him Josh, and I have been together for 6 years, married for 4, and we don't have kids. We have a really healthy and communicative relationship. We're both pretty easygoing and I really love him. He started working at a large accounting firm about 3 years ago, and from what he tells me, he loves it there. He's made a lot of friends through his job, and he goes out with them for drinks and social events quite often, and I've been totally okay with that. I'm quite introverted, so I've never been interested in meeting his colleagues or work friends, nor have I asked to. I've got my own circle of friends, and I'm fine with us having separate friend groups. After what happened yesterday, it only just occurred to me that he has never actually asked me if I'd like to meet any of them, or go to one of his work events. I guess that's important context. Anyway, I'll start with what happened a few months ago, that I had brushed off until now. I was at a bar with some friends for a couple of Friday after work drinks, and a guy approached me. He was there with some friends too. He looked slightly familiar, but I hadn't met him before. He seemed friendly enough, and he asked me, "My name, right?" I think I must have just given him a confused look, because he followed up with, "I'm Jake, I work with Josh." I realized that I recognized him from some photos on my husband's phone. I don't use social media except for a private Instagram, so I'm not sure if he posted the photos anywhere, but we've got a very trusting relationship, so I look in his photos sometimes. Don't hate me. This is where it gets a bit embarrassing. I'm a bit socially awkward, and so I struggled to end the conversation, but he just kept talking at me. I guess he was already a couple of beers deep. But while he was talking, he said something like, "It's great that you guys are still so close. I haven't talked to my brother in ages." At the time I was like, huh? But I just assumed he was drunk and not making sense, so I ignored it. He started to get a little flirty, so I turned to my friends and we left shortly after that. I didn't say anything to them about it, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I also decided not to tell my husband that I had met his coworker Jake. Not to hide it, but because I figured the guy wouldn't even remember talking to me, and I didn't want to make it awkward for Josh at work by telling him his colleague tried to hit on me. I just thought no harm, no foul. But yesterday morning, I was out walking our dog, Monty. He's a cross between a few breeds and has very unique markings. This matters, I promise. And was on my way to my regular cafe, which is in town. I was waiting in line to order, and the guy in front was an older man. He got his coffee and turned around, but stopped and looked at my dog and goes, "Hello, Monty." Monty was super excited to see him, apparently, and so I guessed that the guy was another colleague of Josh's, because Josh brings the dog to the office a couple of times a week. I thought it was sweet, to be honest. So I smiled at him and said hi. He introduced himself. I guessed correctly that he was a colleague. But then he said something like, "Aren't you a good sister?" walking his dog for him. I was so confused that I didn't even know how to react at first. So I stumbled on my words and just said, "It's my dog." I regret it, but I genuinely couldn't bring myself to correct him and say that I'm Josh's wife and not his sister. It was just too awkward, and I just wanted to leave because I think was suddenly dawning on me what might have been going on. He asked me something about sharing a dog, but I was able to escape the conversation by being next in line to order my coffee, and he left. I seriously don't know what to do, because what the fuck? Do I even ask my husband about this? Part of me is just assuming or hoping that it's a mistake, that he doesn't talk about me much at work and they assume we are related because we both have brown hair. But the thought that he has been telling his coworkers that I'm his sister, and evidently they have seen what I look like, so they must have seen photos, makes my stomach churn. I don't even know how I would broach the subject with him. I need some help. What would you guys do in this situation? I have only told one friend what happened because it's so weird and embarrassing, and she has jumped straight to time to plot his downfall. Because she's my ride or die, love her, but I don't want to immediately assume the worst, or ruin my marriage over something that could be nothing. I'm sorry for the long and rambly post, but I would really appreciate any and all advice. Edit, holy fuck. Thank you everyone who commented with some advice. I haven't read all of them, but I really appreciate the suggestions from you guys. A small update, Josh came home at about 2:30 a.m. last night, but he was drunk so he just went straight to sleep, which is fine by me because fuck having this conversation in that state. I've just woken up but he's still sleeping. First thing I just want to clear up. I've seen a lot of people suggesting I have crippling social anxiety, or am severely introverted, which I suppose you could glean from the way I explained what happened, but I'm not. I meant that I'm slightly introverted and that I'm not the most eager to meet lots of new people at once, especially a bunch of finance bros whose weekends consist of unending sports bar beers, where I assume I would be mansplained everything until my ears bleed. Prob a negative assumption, but I'm sure some of you know what I mean. I suppose you could say that I'm confrontation averse, in that I'm quite laid back and prefer to keep a conversation easy and positive. IDK. I don't like it when things are awkward, and correcting when people misrecognize me is one of those things, but I'm not terrified of confrontation. Also, my husband and I do share some mutual friends. I didn't explain that well, but our lives are not entirely separate. The way he acts towards me around our mutual friends is extremely affectionate and normal. It is only his work friends that I have never interacted with. I've also seen some people suggest that what is going on is equivalent to my husband beating me and me hopelessly wondering whether I should break up with him. Or that I'm stupid for thinking my relationship was healthy when it clearly isn't. Like, damn, cut me some slack. I'm a real person and this is an entirely alien and bizarre situation for me. My first reaction wasn't to assume the worst, but I do appreciate that you all have made me certain that it is a big deal. I guess I needed confirmation that the things that happened are enough proof that Josh has been purposefully lying, and they weren't just mix-ups. I'm going to talk to him today, and ask him directly why he's telling his coworkers that I'm his sister. I followed the advice of writing my points down so that they don't get lost if I get emotional, lol. I will do my best not to let him slither out of it, and I hope he has some proof that his colleagues know I'm his wife. I know that's not the theatrical confrontation you guys were hoping for, but it's a Saturday, and I can't wait. Wish me luck, thank you all. Update 1. Hi everyone, I just wanted to say thank you for overwhelming amount of support and advice. I'm blown away and it really means a lot and has kept me grounded. I'm sorry for the slow update. I know a lot of you were interested in what happened. I actually tried to update on Saturday, but it turns out this subreddit doesn't allow me to post an update until 48 hours after my first post. I'm also only allowed to post one single update, so I'll try to fit as much as I can here. Sorry for how long it might end up getting. I'll just get right into it. On Saturday morning I woke up earlier than my husband. He was very hungover, so he was like sleeping a rock. But you guys will be proud of me, because I followed some advice and decided to look through his phone properly while he was sleeping. I have been on his phone so often just pissing around on it that I had never thought to check anything very deeply. I know his passcode by heart. I checked all the expected things like Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger, his iMessages, etc., and I didn't find anything that set off alarm bells to me. But I know from some comments that people who are cheating are good at covering their tracks and hiding messages, so I kept looking around. I saw he had a folder called Work, and so I looked in there, and he had a couple of Microsoft apps, Outlook, Authenticator, OneNote, etc., but he also had MS Teams. So I opened that up and had a look around. It did feel like I might have been breaking laws looking at his work messages, but I obviously had to. Anyway, I was already upset to see that he had a bunch of one-on-one chats with several female coworkers. Which, at first glance, is obviously not an issue, because everyone works with people of the opposite gender and are required to communicate with them. But a couple of them were vaguely flirty. Nothing I would call egregious, but there would be the occasional message between them with some playful innuendo or a wink emoji. These upset me, obviously, and they did send me into a bit of a spiral, but I didn't find anything that suggested he was having an out-and-out affair with any of them. Still, I followed someone's suggestion of screenshotting the messages and I airdropped them to myself. I still wanted some evidence of the lie though. Some proof of Josh telling someone that I was his sister directly. A commenter suggested that I go through his messages and search for keyword sister. I wanted to reply to your comment and say thank you for the idea, but the post was locked, so I couldn't, but thank you. So I searched for sis on his MS Teams, hoping to find results for both sister and sis. A bunch of messages from all hands group chats or one-on-one chats came up from other people, all unrelated and about their own sisters or whatever. But my heart dropped out my ass LOL, when I saw there was a direct message from Jake, the guy from the bar, to Josh from a Monday a few months ago. Jake's messages said, "Ran into your sis at the bar on Fry. She's single, right?" And my husband had the fucking gall to reply, "Nah, she's married." I literally almost burst into flames on the spot when I saw that. I can't even describe how much I was shaking after reading those messages. Firstly, that I could have confronted Josh about this months ago. I was, and still am, so furious with myself for that. Josh would have been fucking praying I didn't remember meeting Jake or that I wouldn't mention it, and he would have been counting his lucky stars that I never did. He probably thought he was hot shit for getting away with that, and I nearly burnt a hole through the floor thinking about it, lol. But secondly, I was just in shock that he had the balls to tell this guy that I'm the one who is married because he doesn't want anyone having it on with me, but he is allowed to coyly flirt with every fucking woman in the office. Anyway, I kept going back through the search results on his MS Teams, and eventually I got as far back as 2-ish years ago, and I did in fact find a message from Josh himself to a group chat. It said me and sis in Nusa Dua. I clicked on that and saw that he had sent it alongside a bunch of photos of him and I from our holiday to Bali. We went to Bali for our second anniversary. I thought he probably chose those photos because he's shirtless and had been working out, so he looked hot in all of them. I was in tears seeing all of this, obviously. I took screenshots of those too and airdropped all of the screenshots to myself. Needless to say, I was devastated, and still am, to see all of that. I am still struggling to even process it at all. But that all happened on Saturday morning, and I immediately took myself to my friend's house. I'll call her Sophie. I went to her place to cry it out and show her what I found, and she was extremely supportive and probably more furious than me, lol. At around 1:30 p.m. I got a phone call from Josh, and I hung it up immediately. He sent me a few messages along the lines of, "Where are you, baby? I'm ordering food, want some? Sad to not wake up next to you this morning." Guys, I have to reiterate how much I love this man, and how fucking heart-wrenching it was to see him still acting like nothing had gone wrong. It took so much willpower to not just pretend none of it had ever happened and go home to him. I know a lot of you will yell at me or accuse me of being terrified of confronting him about this, which is not true. Please have some empathy. It takes me time to process my emotions, and I wouldn't have even been able to form a sentence if I tried to confront him immediately after seeing those messages. I needed some time away with Sophie to recollect myself, and so I stayed the night at her place. She ordered us Chinese and she helped me plan how I would confront him. I got a bunch more texts and calls from him as the evening progressed, and I eventually put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Sunday morning I woke up feeling more angry than sad, so I opened my phone and finally replied to his messages. "Coming home now, need to talk." I kept it cryptic to make him squirm, to be honest. Because I was fraught with emotions, I can't remember the entire conversation word for word, but I'll try to replay it as best I can. Long story short, I got home and he tried to hug me, but I refused him and we just stood in the kitchen. I did confront him like someone suggested. I just said, "Why have you been telling your coworkers I'm your sister?" I wish it would have been like a movie scene where the color drained from his face, or he immediately looked like a deer in headlights, but he didn't. It was like he had been girding himself for this confrontation for a while, because he just frowned at me and looked flabbergasted. He just said, "Huh?" This made me so angry. How are you going to pretend to be stupid after 3 years of lying? I basically said, "Don't play fucking dumb. 2 of your coworkers have greeted me as your sister and I have proof of you telling them. And I know you're pretending to be single." Essentially, I asked him what he had to say for himself. He still played stupid. He became moderately defensive and just kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about," or, "Why would I lie about you?" I cannot describe how furious I was at this point, but I was in tears. I always cry when I'm angry. So he was trying to comfort me as if I was having some kind of irrational breakdown. I showed him the screenshot of his message saying me and sis, and I said something like, "You tell me." He just said, "I don't know what I'm looking at," and, "I'm confused." I got so angry that I left again, and went back to Sophie's, because it felt like a dead-end road. I didn't think I was going to get him to admit to anything, and I was just getting so furious I couldn't continue. He was really upset and in tears, which to me was evidence that he knew he was lying and that he was going to have to come up with some explanation. He tried to get me to stay, but I told him that until you have something to say for yourself, we've got nothing to talk about. At like 8:30-ish, he called me again and I did pick up. He basically asked for us to talk and he said he has some things to say. So I went back to our apartment. He had written out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper as if he had prepared a speech and sat me down on the couch. He asked me not to say anything while he was explaining himself. I'll write down the gist of what he said in bullet points. He started by apologizing relentlessly and admitting that he pretended to be stupid before because he couldn't immediately think of something to say for himself. He said that immediately after he started at his job, he realized the atmosphere was like a frat house. All of his team members were men in their 20s and 30s that were single and fuckboys, his word. He noticed that the one guy in their team that was married would either get picked on, or essentially excluded from any and all social interactions. That included getting lunch, inside jokes, going out on Friday, etc. These guys were friendly and welcoming to Josh, and he admitted that he was desperate to fit in with them. He hated feeling like fresh meat. So he was scared that saying he was married would alienate him from his coworkers, and at first just never mentioned that he was married. He said he did wear his wedding ring and that they had just never pointed it out. A few months in, they were all out drinking after work. He admitted that after one of his workmates saw a picture of him and I on his lock screen, they asked him who I was, and in a moment of panic he said, "My sister." He was really apologetic at this point, and he was crying a lot. He couldn't even look at me and he was just reading what he had written down. Anyway, he said that from then, he basically dug himself a deeper and deeper grave, because they kept grilling him about me and wanting to see more pictures of me. He said he had let it go on too long and that he didn't have the balls to admit to the lie. They would always bring me up and ask shit like, "Did you give her my number yet?" Or joke that they had slept with me, etc. So when he got that message from Jake, he essentially thought it was just him taking the piss, but he didn't like the jokes they were making about me and said that I was married in hopes they would stop. They didn't. He said that this wasn't the first time he told them I was married. In fact, he had said so pretty much immediately after saying I was his sister. He said that those pictures of us in Nusa Dua were the only pictures that he had purposefully sent them and deliberately lied about, after what he called an endless barrage of pestering from his colleagues to share the pics from his holiday. He said he was really ashamed that he did that. He told me that he had never had an affair or even considered it, that the messages between him and his female colleagues were banter and that it was commonplace to talk to people like that in the office. He also said he knows how disgusting it is and he is embarrassed to have been acting like a fuckboy. Again, his word. He concluded his speech by apologizing again, and said that he was disgusted with himself and ashamed that he had lied for so long, but felt like he had trapped himself and that he couldn't find a way to get himself out of it. He said he knows he could have confessed the truth to either his coworkers or to me at any point but that he didn't because he was a coward. He said that he'll confess to his entire office that he lied and that I am his wife and not his sister if I want him to. He said that he will quit his job without a word if it would make me feel better, and that he hopes I can forgive him but he understands if I can't. Anyway, I couldn't really think of anything to say at that point. He went to lock himself in the bathroom and I just sat on the couch crying. I still don't know if I can trust what he said, and a lie that extreme is just baffling to me. If he can lie like that, for so long, what else could he be lying about? But his explanation and apologies seemed so sincere and genuine, and I guess to an extent what he said is believable. He has always been extroverted but very susceptible to peer pressure, especially from other blokes. If nothing else, to me, it's a sign of shocking immaturity. Anyway, I packed up a bag and went back to Sophie's, and I'm still at her place as I'm writing this. She said I can stay as long as I need to. I told Josh that I needed time away from him to think about everything and whether or not I believe him or whether I can ever trust him again. He told me to take as long as I needed and that he will still be there if or when I get back, he said. Even if it takes a year. Right now nothing feels real. I'm still dealing with the emotional whiplash from all of this and I can't keep food down or think about anything. I've taken the day off work and Josh told me he's going to take off the whole week. Sophie and my other friends have told me not to make a decision on anything until my head is clear. I spoke to my parents this morning and my mom says it's just a bump in the road, but she and my dad adore Josh so they're pretty biased, lol. That's where I am right now. I'll take some time before I consider my next steps. I can't say whether I'm leaning towards forgiveness or divorce, but those are really the only options. I kind of feel lost in a void at the moment. That's probably the best way to describe it, just emptiness. Thanks again for all of your advice and support. I'm truly so grateful, and having this place to write down all of my thoughts has been helpful to get my mind a little clearer. This will be my last update, unless I make an edit to clear things up. All the best. 3. Fiancé vanishes after leaving me with his sick son. Now his parents have disowned him and given me their house. For over 8 months now, I, F32, have been engaged to my fiancé, M38. For the past year, we have shared accommodation in his house. From his former marriage, he has a 7-year-old autistic kid who suffers regular illness. The lad requires much extra care and attention. My fiancé received a call from his ex-wife last week from another state, around a 6-hour drive away. He informed me he needed to go assist her since there was some kind of emergency. Although they don't often interact outside of talking about their son's care, I was shocked. Nevertheless, I knew that crises arise, so I said okay. That same day he left, declaring he would most likely return in 2 to 3 days. He still hasn't returned after 1 week. Every day I have been phoning him, and he always says the same: he will be back shortly, and it is taking longer than intended. He never provides me any specifics regarding what is really happening though. I am here alone looking after his son in the meantime. It's rather difficult. Though I'm not equipped to manage his particular requirements, I still care about the lad. He experiences meltdowns for which I have no idea how to control. He has been sick with a fever for the past few days, which is frightening since I do not know his medical history well. He needs help with simple chores that I am not always sure how to accomplish. Every day I'm growing more agitated and concerned. Why won't my fiancé inform me about the emergency's nature? Why is that so slow? I'm beginning to question whether something else is going on or whether there is truly an emergency at all. When I ask him straight what the issue is, he responds evasively, saying, "It's complicated. Or I'll explain when I get back." Not sure what to believe. He's shielding me from terrible news, but another part of me is dubious that he may be lying about the whole event since I feel as though something significant has happened. Dealing with his son around the clock wears me out. Though this is far more than I signed up for, I love the boy. I am not his parent, hence I am not suited to be his only caregiver for a long run. I worry I might do something wrong and botch up. Furthermore, upsetting me is my fiancé's lack of apparent awareness of how challenging this is for me. He hardly asks how we're doing when I phone. He has not volunteered to return or forward someone else to assist. Like he has forgotten about us. What to do is unknown. Though I'm at my wit's end, I can't leave his son alone. Though I'm scared about overstepping or creating trouble, I'm thinking about phoning the parents of my fiancé to see if they might come help. If there is a legitimate crisis my fiancé is handling, I also want not to humiliate him. Am I overreacting? Should I be more patient, or is this as strange as it feels to me? I am beginning to doubt our relationship overall. What does it say about his dedication to me and our future if he could simply leave us like this without saying anything? I would much benefit from any guidance. Has anyone found themselves in a similar circumstance? What action ought I to take? Yes, this exploded overnight. I appreciate your replies and support overall. I'll try to address some often asked questions. I have tried texting him, yes. He answers, but in the same evasive manner. No, I do not have his ex-wife's contact information. I have never run across her. Although his son is in special education, right now school is off for summer vacation. Part-time from home, I have been able to look after him around the clock. Together for 2 years overall, my fiancé and I have for much of that time, I have known his son. Yet I have never been left alone with him for more than 1 day before. Many of you advise me to run a welfare check by phoning the police in his ex-wife's city. Though I'm thinking about it, should a family emergency arise, I worry about starting trouble. I believe I should let him 1 more day to provide me with a proper justification. If he doesn't, I'll attempt first to call his parents and then think about phoning the police. A few of you have wanted further history on our relationship and his past marriage. I will relate what I know. My fiancé spent 9 years married to his ex-wife. When their kid was 4, they divorced. From what he has told me, their split was much influenced by the burden of raising a child with special needs. Depressed and feeling overwhelmed, his ex-wife battled. They chose to split even though they first considered counseling. Though it wasn't very nasty, the divorce wasn't really neat either. Their differences were mostly related to how their son was cared for and housed. They finally decided on my fiancé having main custody. His ex visits one weekend a month and for 1 week during summer and winter breaks. According to my fiancé, his ex-wife struggles with his requirements even if she loves their son. She agreed to limited custody for this reason. She is usually late, but pays child support. Although my fiancé doesn't enjoy talking about mom, he has noted that since the divorce she has struggled personally. Though he never mentioned specifics, I sensed he meant mental health or perhaps drug problems. My fiancé had been divorced roughly a year when we first met. He told me straightforwardly that he had a special needs child and made sure I knew what I was entering. I respect his top focus, his son, as I have always known about it. I enjoy one of his qualities most of all. He is a fantastic, committed father. Our relationship grew really rapidly. Following a year of dating, we moved in together and he proposed 4 months later. Things have been rather decent generally. He treats me kindly, is diligent and is, until now, we had few big difficulties adjusting to life as a blended family. That's why this situation is so confusing and damaging. He leaving us like this and being so quiet are absolutely against his nature. I kept thinking whether I missed any red flags or indicators along the road. Since many have inquired, a few more specifics regarding his son. He is 7 years old. Mostly using a tablet software and some simple signs, he speaks when his schedule is thrown off or he becomes overstimulated. He is prone to meltdowns. His many dietary allergies and sensitivities call for a specific diet. He also has epilepsy, which is largely under control with medication but still causes sporadic episodes. He physically is tiny for his age and exhibits some motor skill deficits. He needs assistance with restroom use, dressing and bathing. He wears pull-ups at night and occasionally throughout the day should we be out for a protracted period. During the academic year he attends a special education program offering speech therapy, occupational therapy, and other services. Usually, he needs continuous supervision even at home. He regularly wakes up several times a night and struggles to fall asleep. I have before assisted in his care, but always with my fiancé at hand. Being totally accountable for him is the first thing I have done, and it is taxing. Doing something incorrectly or neglecting a sign indicating he requires medical attention terrifies me. Some have advised me to ask his therapist or doctor for guidance. That's a good suggestion. I'll probably do that today. I'll compile a list of all his doctors and try to find some direction. About the following actions with my fiancé, I'm not sure. Though another part of me feels like this is unforgivable, regardless of the cause, another part of me wants to provide him the benefit of the doubt. I'll fall asleep on it and decide whether to call the cops or his parents first thing in the morning. I appreciate once more all of your guidance and encouragement. When I get additional data, I'll update. Update 1, though not fantastic news, I have an update. This morning, I broke down at last and phoned the parents of my fiancé. They knew he was even out of town, but not that startled, they drove right over to assist their grandson. I made the decision to bite the bullet and call the police department in his ex-wife's city to ask for a welfare check while they were en route. The cop I spoke with indicated they would send someone to her address and was quite sympathetic. About 1 hour later, the cops phoned me back. They claimed to have corresponding contacts with my fiancé and his ex-wife. Both are good. No emergency exists here. Privacy rules prevented the officer from providing additional specifics, but he stressed that there was no proof of any crime or threat. My fiancé called at last as I was organizing this information with my future in-laws. He stated he was going home right away to personally explain everything since he understood I must be angry and perplexed. He advised me to wait to make decisions until we could personally discuss things. Not sure what to believe. Though I'm glad he's all right, I also become enraged and offended. With this kind of abandonment of us, what possible reason could there be? Like me, his parents are equally perplexed and offended. They have volunteered to stay with us till he returns, late tonight. Although I appreciate their assistance with their grandson, I am dreading the upcoming conversation. Our whole relationship seems to have been brought into doubt. Once we talk, I will update once again. I appreciate your help during this insane scenario. Update 2. For hours I have been looking at my desktop attempting to come up with the correct words to describe what happened. I promised to let you all know, so here goes. My hands are shaking as I type this and I still find it difficult to believe it's real. Rather than arriving home as promised last night, my fiancé phoned. I replied right away, relief flooding me at the sight of his name on my phone. That kind of relief was fleeting. I'm not coming home, he said with a strange calmness. I'm staying here with Sarah. The woman he'd claimed required emergency assistance, his ex-wife. I thought of myself as having been stabbed in the gut. What do you mean you're not coming home? I was able to choke out. What about your son? What about us? He stopped long before speaking once more. We have decided to attempt our marriage once more, Sarah and I. After our past week of reconnecting, both of us believe this to be the appropriate course of action. I found it difficult to breathe. It cannot be occurring this way. But your son? I said, stuttering. She requires you. He has autism. He depends on consistency and schedule. You cannot just walk away from him. Still another wait. His voice was lower, almost embarrassed as he spoke once again. We have discussed it, and while we are repairing our relationship, we believe it would be too challenging to look after a child with such great requirements. For now, we believe he would be best staying with you and my parents. I came upon crimson. The man I knew, the committed parent I had grown in love with, would never say something like this. Would not forsake his child, particularly one with special needs. Your autistic son is inconvenient for your new life plans. You are leaving him? I snarled, anger replacing my surprise. Who are you? Right now I hardly know you at all. I wasn't listening while he tried to defend his behavior. I told him precisely how disgusted and damaged I felt. I called him a liar, a coward, a horrible father. I informed him I would be letting the authorities know his son had been abandoned. Weakly protesting, "You cannot do that." I grabbed and hanged "Watch me." My head whirling, I sat there in startled quiet for a few minutes. Then I turned behind me and heard a little voice. "Where's Daddy?" I turned to find her fiancé's son clutching his iPad at the doorway. My heart started to break once more. How would I approach explaining this to him? I got him back to bed using hazy assurances that Daddy would be home shortly. Though I had no other to say, it felt like a lie. I phoned my fiancé's parents once he was asleep. Arriving an hour later, they looked perplexed and frightened. I told them everything and got them seated. While I spoke, his father's face grew redder and redder. His mother broke down crying. When I finished, his father thundered, "What about his son? That would be too difficult, too challenging? I'll demonstrate the challenge." Tears flooding her face, his mother was shaking her head. "I don't understand," she said repeatedly. "This is not at all like him. More than all, he adores that boy." Most of the evening we stayed up, alternately feeling loss, uncertainty and rage. By daybreak, we had a strategy. First we visited the police station. When we described the circumstances, the cops were somewhat worried. They stated they would be looking at child abandonment and gathered through statements from every one of us. "We treat cases involving special needs children very seriously," the detective reassured us. "We shall be thoroughly investigating this." We next spoke with a lawyer to go over custody choices. I didn't have legal rights to his son as my fiancé and I weren't married. As next of kin though, his parents might seek emergency custody. The attorney got right on the paperwork. My phone was blowing out messages and missed calls from my fiancé all through this. I paid them all little attention. His voice and his justifications made me sick. His folks settled me down at the kitchen table when we arrived home. Though they appeared worn out and damaged, their eyes gleamed with a steely will. "We have made a decision," his father remarked, his voice austere but emotionally charged. "We're drowning him." I blinked unexpectedly. "Are you clear? That is a major stride." His mother nodded, blotting away a tear. "We cannot respect what he has done, abandoning his child and lying to all of us. It is unchangeable. Even though he is our kid, we want nothing to do with someone who would do that. Our son raised him better than this," his father said. "I know I can't call someone who would abandon their special needs child son. I'm not sure what's gotten into him." I nodded, too familiar with their suffering and resentment. "We wanted to also discuss the house and our grandson," his mother said. "We want you to remain here for as long as is necessary. We understand this has been rather shocking, and we want you not to have to worry about where to live on top of all else." I started to object, but she held a hand to halt me. "Please let us handle this. We know our grandson trusts you, and you have been quite wonderful. If he stays here with you for now, where things are familiar, we believe it would be best. We want him to have as much stability as possible, hence we will take custody but—" Tears welling up in my eyes made sense. Particularly in the middle of their personal suffering, their generosity was astounding. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. The following several days passed as a haze of activity. We visited social workers, spoke with lawyers extensively, and had many sessions with the kid of my ex-fiancé attempting to explain what was occurring in words he could grasp. Seeing his uncertainty and anguish was terrible. Not understanding why his dad wasn't returning home, he kept asking for him. Though we did our best to console him, how would you explain to a 7-year-old autistic boy that his father had left him? My ex kept text messaging and calling. At last I read some of his messages. They combined requests for understanding, apologies, and defenses. He said he still loved his son but felt this was for the best. He mentioned that Sarah and he were intending to start over in another state. Saying it would just complicate matters, he urged me not to notify the authorities. I ignored all of it. Instead, I forwarded every correspondence to the investigator working on the matter. The days stretched into weeks, and we adjusted to a different schedule. Parents of my ex visited daily to assist with their grandson. Knowing how vital routine was to him, we cooperated to keep his calendar as nearly perfect as we could. I put myself into studying all I could on raising an autistic child. I visited with his doctors and therapists, joined internet support groups and read books. Though at times it was overwhelming, I was resolved to do right by this small child who had gone through so much. Through it all, his grandparents were really outstanding. They were there for every minor triumph, every sleepless night, every meltdown. Though I knew they were still working through their own loss and resentment over their son's behavior, they never grumbled. About 1 month after everything transpired, one evening I was sitting on the porch after at last getting my ex's son asleep. His granny came out to sit next to me. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" she questioned softly. I grumbled and ran a hand over my hair. "I'm managing. Though difficult, we are moving toward it." She nodded, stroking my hand. "You are doing a really wonderful job. We really appreciate you staying by our grandson through all of this." Tears were pricking at my eyes. I said, "I love him," simply. I could not see walking away, no matter how hard it gets. She mumbled a sorrowful grin. "That's what it means to be a parent overall. It's unfortunate our son found that incomprehensible." We watched the stars emerge in companionable silence for some time. She finally asked, "Have you heard anything more from him?" I gave my head a shake. "Not since last week." Trying to defend himself, he sent another protracted email. I answered none. She let out a big sigh. "I never thought I would say this about my own child, but now he has to live with the repercussions. He made his choice." I nodded, caught in a mixture of resentment and grief. "I keep wondering if there were signs I missed, if I should have seen this coming somewhat." She put her hand between mine. "Don't treat yourself in such a way. Nobody of us saw this approaching. He tricked every one of us." Sitting there, I started to consider how much had changed in not too long. 1 month ago, I felt I understood the course of my future. I was planning to start a life with a man I loved, be stepmother to his special needs son, and be married. Future vanished from us now. In place of it was something I never would have thought possible. Along with his parents, I was staying in the house of my ex-fiancé helping to raise his baby. Therapy visits, meltdown control, and innumerable little problems occupied my days. Though it was not the life I had intended, I discovered as I sat on the porch that it was one I was beginning to adore. This small child had totally captured my heart since his own father had left him behind. His grandparents, who had every right to leave this disaster, had accepted me as family instead. Yes, there were times when I wanted to yell at the unfairness of it all, but there was also love and purpose and a sense of belonging I hadn't expected to discover following such betrayal. Regarding my ex-fiancé, I have heard via the grapevine that he and his ex-wife did in fact relocate outside of state. The cops are still looking at things, his acts probably have legal ramifications. Though generally I just hope he stays away, part of me hopes he will face justice for what he has done. We are all resolved to show his son the love and stability he requires. He deserves better. I have no idea what the future presents. Though I'm precisely where I need to be right now. Helping to care for a small kid deserving of all the love in the world. I'm not sure whether I can ever completely understand why my ex did what he did. I appreciate all of your help over this somewhat challenging period. More than you could have ever imagined, your kind comments and guidance have meant I want to concentrate on our new family dynamic and give my ex's son all the care he needs, hence I might not update again for some time, but know that your support has truly changed our life. Am I the asshole for outing a man as a pedophile in front of his new wife after he made a comment about my miscarriage? So, this is going to be long, and I will try to include the details as best I can. This happened a month ago, and it's still echoing in my head. Editing to add a few things, though this will be the last update, as, for the most part, a lot of you have been very helpful in helping me see things differently. Of course, there are people who say this is fake, but this is Reddit, so I guess that's to be expected, considering I'm a total stranger and this whole thing is ridiculous. I myself haven't posted this type of thing before, so I wasn't sure how much or what all to include. If people really think I'm messed up enough to spin a story like this, I won't argue. I myself am on the spectrum. My brain constantly replays stressful incidents in my head. Unfortunately, my relationship with Mitch was not the first toxic abusive relationship, but luckily, it was my last. In my state, the registry has offenders listed in alphabetical order of last name. I was scrolling through it to find Mitch after my father came to my house and spoke with me in front of Mitch about what he had found. My father watched him pack and leave while I went to my mother's house. That's when I found Sean's mugshot, as they have to update pictures frequently. The person who said, there was an easier way to go about it, wasn't a friend of mine but a mutual acquaintance of my brother's. I was at his house talking about the ordeal when this mutual made that comment. The conversation ended and the whole mood of the dinner party we were at shifted. This is the last I'll be adding or replying, as I'm currently 16 weeks pregnant with my rainbow baby, and I refuse to let this shitty situation drag me down. Thanks to everyone who helped relieve the stress it was causing. I just want to take this time to focus on my baby girl. I'm sorry if the way I worded anything caused any misunderstandings, but I know what happened, and I'm glad I told her. The family member who was my grapevine knew the woman's cousin and asked me this morning if she could give her my number, to which I agreed. I look forward to talking to her on a better note and meeting her daughters, Kayla, 24, and Arya, 20. When I, 26F, was 21, I was in an abusive and toxic relationship with a man we'll call Mitch, fake name, 35M at the time. Mitch was friends with this guy, who we'll call Sean, fake name, 38 at the time, and a recovering alcoholic. Sean always gave me bad vibes. I had known that Mitch met Sean in jail, but I never pried about why he was there. Mitch told me that he himself was in jail for a bar fight. I was naive and believed him. A few months into the relationship, I got pregnant but ultimately lost the baby. It was around this time that my parents started hearing rumors about Mitch. They asked me for his birthday and full name, and it turns out he was a registered sex offender and did time for child pornography. I left him immediately and even looked at the registry myself. Not much of a surprise that I found Sean listed, mugshot and all, also for minor related incidents. I have since moved on and am happily married in a completely different county. Last week, my husband and I were visiting family in my hometown when we came across Sean in a store. We did our best to avoid him, yet he walked right up to me and my husband while we were at checkout and had the nerve to ask me, "Where's the kid?" Knowing damn well I had a miscarriage all those years ago. I saw red. At that moment, I realized he was there with a woman, who was with two special needs adults, both female. I saw the rings and I asked her, how could you trust a man like that around them? Because it was very clear that both were nonverbal, as they could barely even call her mom. Sean immediately got tense, and his wife asked me what I meant. So I told her. This resulted in her Googling the registry and proceeding to walk out of the store with her daughters in tow. Luckily, my husband stepped in before Sean could say anything else. I've heard through the grapevine that she has started divorce proceedings and now Sean has started drinking again. I brought this up with someone, and they said there were better ways to go about this than how it happened, but I don't know. I just need an outside opinion. I hope this helps. My husband said he fucking hates our baby and wishes it was never here. Now I've started planning an exit strategy to protect my baby. My husband has no patience with our 4-month-old. We're older parents. I'm 43 and my husband is 55. We've been married for 2 years, and our son wasn't planned, it just happened. At first he was happy, but once the baby arrived, I realized he was no longer happy. He rarely helps with the baby, claiming he doesn't know how to do anything, despite me showing him simple tasks like changing diapers and putting on clothes. He says it's too hard and never truly tries, so I've been doing it all myself. Our baby had colic and would cry more than usual. My husband hated that and would get very annoyed if our son cried for more than 5 minutes. He would yell at me, do something, get him to shut up, and never once tried to help. I felt so alone during the first few weeks after our son was born. Then my husband began complaining that the baby was taking up all my time and I had no time for him. Now, our son is 4 months old and has started being very clingy, crying every time I put him down. It's been really frustrating because there are times I have to set him down, but I never let him cry for more than 10 minutes. Yesterday, I had to run an errand and left my husband to look after our son. I wasn't gone for long. It was probably 15 minutes after I left, when he called me, saying I needed to come back because he couldn't get the baby to stop crying. I told him to try taking the baby outside. Shortly after, I got a notification from the baby monitor and saw our son in his crib crying. I was so frustrated that I turned around and came back home. When I got back, our son was still in his crib crying, and my husband was just sitting on the couch. I was furious and asked him why he left the baby crying for so long. He said, "I couldn't get him to stop. I fucking hate that thing and wish it was never here." His comment surprised and saddened me. I know everyone gets frustrated at times, but I feel like his comment was over the top and I don't know what to do anymore. Update. I'm planning an exit strategy that my husband doesn't know about. Even though he apologized for saying he hated our baby and wished it wasn't here, I no longer trust him. Recently, he has been trying to make amends, but I'm still uncertain about my feelings towards him. This morning, I woke up later than usual and found that both he and my son were gone. He had taken our son for a walk without informing me, which made me panic and almost call the police. They returned just before I did. I told him not to go anywhere with our son because I no longer trust him. He insisted he would never harm his son and that his comment was made out of frustration. He felt I was overreacting and was hurt that I viewed him as a terrible person. I told him only a terrible person would say they hated their helpless baby and wished they weren't here. Despite his efforts to help more by changing diapers and feeding our son, I'm struggling to move past his hurtful comments. He has 4 adult children from a previous marriage and he has a close relationship with them. From what I've seen, he seems to be a good father. Some people have suggested he might have postpartum depression, but when I brought it up, he dismissed it, saying he just gets irritated when our son cries for too long. He claims he's working on his patience, but I wonder if his age, 55, contributes to his lack of patience with our 4-month-old. I'm in my head a lot. Deep down, I think I know what I need to do to keep my child safe, but another part of me wants to give him another chance. Had to delete my account due to an overwhelming amount of emails, but here's the link to my first post. My husband has no patience with our 4-month-old. We're older parents. I'm 43 and my husband is 55. We've been married for 2 years and our son wasn't planned, it just happened. At first he was happy, but once the baby arrived, I realized he was no longer happy. He rarely helps with the baby, claiming he doesn't know how to do anything, despite me showing him simple tasks like changing diapers and putting on clothes. He says it's too hard and never truly tries, so I've been doing it all myself. Our baby had colic and would cry more than usual. My husband hated that and would get very annoyed if our son cried for more than 5 minutes. He would yell at me, "Do something, get him to shut up," and never once tried to help. I felt so alone during the first few weeks after our son was born. Then my husband began complaining that the baby was taking up all my time and I had no time for him. Now our son is 4 months old and has started being very clingy, crying every time I put him down. It's been really frustrating because there are times I have to set him down, but I never let him cry for more than 10 minutes. Yesterday, I had to run an errand and left my husband to look after our son. I wasn't gone for long, it was probably 15 minutes after I left, when he called me, saying I needed to come back because he couldn't get the baby to stop crying. I told him to try taking the baby outside. Shortly after, I got a notification from the baby monitor and saw our son in his crib crying. I was so frustrated that I turned around and came back home. When I got back, our son was still in his crib crying, and my husband was just sitting on the couch. I was furious and asked him why he left the baby crying for so long. He said, "I couldn't get him to stop. I fucking hate that thing and wish it was never here." His comment surprised and saddened me. I know everyone gets frustrated at times, but I feel like his comment was over the top and I don't know what to do anymore. Relevant comments. OP when asked if it was a head injury since her husband is a father and had kids before. He's never had a head injury. He mentioned that he doesn't remember his own kids crying as much as our baby does. Has her husband been a hands-on father in the past? I've tried to get him to help with our baby, but he keeps saying he doesn't know what to do, despite me showing him. He admitted that he never did anything for his kids, his ex-wife did everything. Comment by OOP. I'm not judging him for expressing frustration. We all get frustrated at some point. But I'm currently at my breaking point. My issue with him is that every single time our son cries for longer than 5 minutes, he yells at me to shut him up or do something now. He doesn't even help or even attempt to. He's only started showing some interest in our son recently because I think he fears I will leave. Update 2. I know most people might think I'm crazy for leaving him alone with our son again after he said he fucking hated him and wished he wasn't here, but I thought things had gotten better. He told me to take some time for myself today, but then he texted me while I was out, saying he needed a break. It completely ruined my me time and gave me so much anxiety. I was already uncomfortable leaving them, but he kept reassuring me that everything would be fine. Our baby is going through the clingy phase right now, and I've tried to explain to him that it's normal, but he thinks I'm enabling it by holding him too much. It just feels like things aren't getting better. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if he's right that I'm holding our son too much. I'm just so frustrated right now. Transcript of text messages. H for hubby. H, he cries every time I put him down. It is all your fault because you hold him all day. H, when are you coming back home? I need a break. H, I can't get him to stop crying. You need to come home now. OOP, it's almost time for a nap. I think he's just tired. Can you put him in the crib now? OOP, I'll be home in an hour. OOP, I haven't been gone that long and you're asking for a break. You literally told me I could go. I asked you more than once if you were okay taking care of him and you said it was okay. H, not if he's crying the entire time. I'm not okay with that. OOP, you're always complaining. It's so exhausting at the point. H, because you're not getting the point. You're making it hard for me. H, not if he's crying the entire time. I'm not okay with that. OOP, you're always complaining. It's so exhausting at the point. H, because you're not getting the point. You're making it hard for me. H, he's crying every time one put him down and you get mad at me for letting him cry. OOP, if you need to get stuff done then it's okay to put him down and let him cry for a bit. I have no issue with that. OOP, you're trying to ruin the little time I have to myself. That's exactly what you're doing. H, every time I try to talk to you, you get defensive. It's like you don't want me to say anything. OOP, because you're not making any sense and you're trying to pick a fight with me because you have to look after your child. Facing the truth, discovering my fiancé's deception, just 2 weeks before our wedding and the consequences that follow. I really have to get this off my mind. I feel like I'm going crazy. For around 6 years, engaged for 1, my fiancée Sarah and I have known each other. Our wedding is set for just 2 weeks, and I recently saw something that makes me feel as if I am making the worst mistake of my life. Sarah and I were using tonight a rare chance to unwind at home. While I was out back working on one of my projects, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Anyway, as you do when working hard, I became thirsty and returned home to grab a drink. There Sarah was at the counter cooking supper and speaking on speakerphone. The voice caught me right away as Marty, my brother-in-law. This is now where my thinking goes completely distorted. Having been attempting to get in touch with her and she is not responding texts, Marty questioned Sarah where her sister, Evelyn, is. She just left here. She should be home in a half hour or so, Sarah says to him. It should be mentioned that Evelyn is the 5-year-old wife of Marty. I have to admit that I went into the kitchen, got a glass and asked Sarah, what was that all about? Not right once registering what she had just said. She said, Marty was looking for Evie. Seeing her texting, I inquired, what are you doing? She says, I'm texting Evie that Marty was looking for her. Still, I pour myself a drink, settle down, sip and then at last my brain kicks in. First of all, I heard Sarah tell Marty Evelyn was here. Evelyn was not here. The last time we saw her was yesterday when she visited to work on some last-minute wedding decoration with Sarah. Second, when I clearly heard Marty mention Evelyn wasn't responding to her texts, why is she texting Evelyn expecting a response? Finally, unless she either knows where she is or right now in front of me, texting her to tell her to get her butt home fast, why the hell would she tell Marty that Evelyn should be back in 30 minutes? My only conclusion is that Sarah is presumably alerting Evie that Marty would expect her home in half an hour and is lying to Marty about the location of her sister. Then I spent probably the next 5 hours creating several theories explaining this behavior. Some decent, some absolutely terrible. And running them back in my thoughts. Though I wanted very badly to ask Sarah about this, I doubted I would get a straight response if what I believe to be happening is indeed happening. Which gets me roughly 1 hour ago. About 1 in the morning, I got up to use the loo and found myself driven to check Sarah's phone. Knowing each other's pins, this wasn't a challenging task for us. Still, I took the phone, went to the restroom, unlocked it, and yep, exactly what I was terrified of and most likely what most of you were hoping for. For approximately 6 months, Sarah's sister Evelyn has been having an affair with a coworker. Sarah has been helping Evelyn hide it for practically that whole period. Between them, there are literally hundreds of books covering sex, the coworker, even quite embarrassing topics about my brother-in-law, just stuff that makes my stomach turn. And here is my soon-to-be bride following all of it without questioning. I grabbed some screenshots of the whole thread, put the phone back where I discovered it and then withdrew to my home office to find myself here blogging it all out on Reddit just so I can avoid the primal scream that wants to come out of my mouth right now. I am exactly 100% screwed, Reddit. I just cannot do it. I cannot marry Sarah. Regarding helping her sister in this affair and victimizing not just Marty but also their 2-year-old kid, I cannot conceive of any logical justification she could present me. On the other hand, my family, Sarah, her family, and I have all invested a lot of money into a wedding scheduled for about 2 weeks. We are not receiving any of that money returned. On top of that, I feel completely dumb. How could I have missed knowing this woman was this way? And just what the devil am I going to do? I most definitely cannot marry her. Still, I still wish. She is gorgeous, laid back, compassionate, and I felt our future was bright. She never wronged me, but I just cannot view her the same today. It like a large black blot on a lovely image. I'm genuinely dreading doing what I know I need to do. I simply don't know how the heck I got this so wrong. I wish I could break something or throw up. Edit. Guys, you clearly don't need to persuade me not to wed Sarah. The wedding is off. I'm simply trying to decide what to do going forward and build the nerve to act. Though the expectations of everyone put a lot of pressure on me, I am not going to bow beneath it. Simply said, I'm not enjoying having to deal with the repercussions. I'm more than a little irate about finding myself in this position. Edit 2, it is 5 a.m. I'm running off a few hours of sleep and have work in 3 hours. I'm going to shower and head into work rather early to avoid stew on this. Sarah and stew are avoided. Thanks to the encouraging folks here and a huge raspberry to the dill holes who keep telling I should figure out whatever excellent reason my soon-to-be ex-fiancé had for this trash. Edit 3, I started working about 7. I started working on the Band-Aid because nobody was in the office and contacted my brother. Living in Australia, he was still up after putting his children to bed. Breaking the news to him about this was difficult since, although I know he has set aside a lot of money for flights for his family and himself to visit, to his credit, as an older brother, he didn't mention it once and simply supported me. He also raised a really important issue. He said, "You deal daily with liars and scammers in a job where this is expected. You are not to blame for seeking somewhere to visit where this is not a consideration." He was exactly right about it, and now I understand why I'm reacting so fiercely to Sarah's involvement in this dishonesty. He also made a brilliant suggestion. He planned to bring his family to Florida for some sightseeing and park visits. Well, the youngsters will now also be accompanied by their uncle. We were going to honeymoon there as well, thus it should be simple as we were going to meet them for some anyway. I'll just offer Sarah's ticket to either my sister or another family member and rebook things to be near his and his family. Though I have responded a few, I haven't had time to review everyone's remarks. Right now, I'm simply trying to divert myself until the day goes on enough where I can reach out to Marty by drinking cup after cup of coffee and attempting to make myself sick. Edit 4, just performed morning stand-up. Having been here so early, my stomach is doing flip-flops from drinking around 2 pots of coffee. I absolutely cannot focus and concentrate. I'm just going to take a sick day, drive over to check if Marty is available since I feel like I can't really anything from my end until I tell him what I know. If not, I will find him down and phone him. Evelyn works a 9 to 5 like me, hence chances are excellent this works out. Marty is a teacher on break right now. Wish Reddit luck. Edit 5. Arrived at Marty's residence somewhat after 10 a.m. We had a long, really nasty conversation in the kitchen after he had just dropped his daughter off for a nap. He guessed this for a few months essentially, but Evelyn has been rather successful at covering her traces, clearly with Sarah's help and a few of their mutual pals. I regretfully only have a few hundred screenshots from Sarah's phone. Not all 6 months of text chats, but I provided him what I have and offered to assist him though I could. I know a few things and a few people since I'm a field analyst in the CU department of a mid-sized insurer specialized in workers' compensation fraud. Still, I am trying to save anything I can from my laptop in the almost brother-in-law's kitchen. Knowing I won't screw Marty over, I have to talk to Sarah tonight and get the word out as soon as I can to my friends and family now. Although our airline has a surname restriction for name changes, I managed to rebook most of the honeymoon thus far. Sarah was flying under her maiden name, thus I had trouble with the ticket. Still, they let me cancel and obtain a partial refund and rebook for my sister, who will be traveling to Florida with 2 brothers and nieces in a few weeks. I absolutely will be letting my family and friends know this afternoon sometime and beg them to keep it close, but I am delaying canceling the venues until after I talk to Sarah since I don't want to tip anyone off until Marty gets his chance to confront Evelyn. Right now I'm essentially in a frenzy, canceling whatever I can cancel, and I'm heading down to the bank in a few to open a new account and pay my payments and straighten my money. Though some have highlighted them, it should be really decent. Since we were not married, the mortgage is in my name. Although Sarah did contribute roughly $20,000 against my $60,000 down payment, I have more income. Though it could be worse, I will most likely have to pay her out that money and a portion of the mortgage payments for the last 16 months. Update was sent as an edit right on the same post. Right now it's about 8:30 p.m. I'm writing from my friend's place. Mark is his name, he used to be a co-worker of mine in the same line of business. As I indicated in a prior update, I work for a respectable-sized insurance carrier's CU department as a field analyst. For those uninitiated, I essentially work as a private investigator. My task is to look at what we believe to be bogus workers' compensation claims. Anyway, as I sort of hinted at, Marty wanted me to help him identify the other man Evelyn was seeing for adultery. We had only a name, let us call him Jake. The first thing I did was not some significant amount of investigating. It was essentially simply looking through LinkedIn, attempting to discover the guy using Evelyn's contacts, but it turned up nothing, which I thought odd. According to Marty, Evelyn claimed she wouldn't be home until perhaps 9 or 10 and that she was meant to be out for drinks tonight following work. I basically understood straight immediately, so he didn't have to explain what he suspected. I told him I would assist him, but he had to come with me. After that, I called my friend Mark, let him know about the circumstances, and asked him to meet us later in the day. Driving over to Marty's parents' house so they could see their granddaughter came first. I waited in the car and have no idea what Marty said them. We next headed to Evelyn's place of employment. One of those big commercial strip malls, it features a sizable non-gated parking park and all of these bland offices in a row. We drove till we came at Evelyn's car, then using the second set of keys, I had Marty unlock it. I next handed Marty a GPS tracker to put in the car and a voice-activated recorder. Once finished with that, we went, parked somewhat down the street, and watched for Evelyn to leave the company and for my friend to arrive. About 20 minutes later, Mark arrived, climbed in the car with us, and about an hour later Evelyn emerged from her workplace carrying 2 of her pals along with a tall, younger-looking man with sandy blonde hair. Clearly holding hands, I thought, damn Evelyn, you're making it easy for me. After a few shots from the car, I waited for Evelyn to leave in hers and began following her. She didn't go straight to a motel or anything, first thinking she may. Rather, she drove to a reasonably good pub and grill in a pleasant area of town and parked on the street. I drove by her as she got out of her car and into the building, then located my own parking space and headed over to the factory. We first dispatched Mark since nobody knew him. He essentially had 2 jobs. First, try to find any compromising photos of Evelyn and Jake. Second, provide my alibi. After about 20 minutes in the car, Marty and I received the first in Mark's series of text messages. These images show Evelyn and Jake making out in front of their 2 female colleagues. Captured Marty's misgivings were correct. They were enabling Evelyn to keep the affair from him. He was clearly really agitated and offended. One of the colleagues apparently is married, and as a couple they get along well with Marty and Evelyn, both of whom have children around the same age. When I asked Marty whether it was sufficient for him, he stated he still genuinely wanted to know who this guy was. We could find out later, I tried to tell him, but at this point he was nearly begging me, so I begged him to wait, texted Mark that I was on my way, and then I went inside the pub myself. Evelyn and her gang were laughing and drinking at one of those big circular tables close to the front window. First thing I saw. I halted as I came in, acted to be startled, then yelled out to Evelyn, "Hi, you're doing here?" Clearly startled to see me, everyone surrounding her stiffened up right away. Evelyn stated we were being married in 2 weeks and fast introduced me as her sister's fiancé. Everyone was congratulating each other really extensively. I thanked them and then reached out my hand to the blonde man, introduced myself using my entire name, thinking he would react in same manner. He did. I was a little surprised since he wasn't named Jake. I greeted everyone else and then told Evelyn I was going to see a coworker. I waved to Mark then excused myself. Once I walked over to Mark, I told him the guy's name. We both grabbed our phones and headed to work. We located him not too long ago. He has social media profiles and a few court case rulings against him. When we learned Jake was his middle name, everything almost came together. At this point, I'm basically happy Evelyn isn't cheating on Marty with 2 other colleagues. Jake is 26, married, and has a 1-year-old daughter, turns out. This simply gets better and better. Anyway, I instructed Marty to wait a few more minutes after texting him the guy's name and decided I wanted to challenge myself. I was essentially watching over children here at the bar. I could see out of the corner of my eye that nobody was especially delighted about this, and my presence was seriously hurting the evening. I was clearly visible to Evelyn and her crew. Excellent. About 10 minutes later, I informed Marty to text Evelyn saying he was spending the night at his parents' house with their daughter. Not long after that, I found Evelyn pulling out her phone to show Jake, then everyone decided to pack up. Good night. Evelyn came over to me and asked whether Sarah and I wanted to visit for dinner this weekend. I grinned and wished her and her colleagues a happy night. That sounded like a terrific idea. After Mark and I paid our payment and ran back to the waiting Marty, we watched them go. Here there was some uncertainty since we were unsure of Evelyn's actual behavior. I had thought she might have already reserved a hotel room and was on her way, which would have greatly reduced my options and complicated everything. It turns out though, that tonight was most likely meant to be just drinks at the bar. It wasn't until Marty chose to spend the evening at his parents' house that it became anything more. Evelyn headed straight home, and we trailed behind her, parking down the street and keeping out of sight. Not long after that, another car drew into Marty's driveway. We watched Jake get out, approach the door, knock and be met by Evelyn. They entered together. At this moment it's roughly 7:30, and tonight I have personal business to attend to. As a friend, I believe I have done rather nearly all I could have for Marty. He can manage the remainder alone. I mean, I feel awful for the guy, absolutely, but I don't want to participate in this drama any more than I already do. Given my circumstances, it seems excessive for me to be the wingman for him facing his cheating wife. Marty says it's good, he will do the rest himself. Evelyn, perhaps he is more of a man than you could have imagined. He visits Evelyn's automobile, picks my equipment, and we say farewell. That was practically 2 hours ago. My phone hasn't been blowing, hence I'm not sure what's going on with Evelyn. I did get one text message from Marty indicating it was done and he was heading to his parents' place for real this time. Ever then, I have been at Mark's. That sums up my role in Marty's narrative essentially. He entered the house recording with his phone if he was wise and followed my counsel. Later on I will find out. Still, my first focus is getting home to tell Sarah the wedding is off. She almost certainly will take it poorly, there is no way she won't. But as I mentioned, right now I simply cannot get married to her. Though I'm not sure what the future holds for us or whether we will live with each other or not, most definitely we are not getting married anytime soon. For those who keep repeating, why didn't you speak with her first? Why did you not face her? Are you folks dumb, I have to ask? She stone cold lied in front of her brother-in-law, whom she has known for roughly 10 years and allegedly believes to be a truly wonderful husband and father. I'm not wired that way. Maybe you are foolish enough to believe that someone can lie that ruthlessly to someone they should care about and then give you the truth. I never had cause to doubt Sarah or not trust her until that point. She was physically unreliable in front of my face and I should let it go or expect her to be honest with me. You probably have no idea what it's like to have your whole perspective of someone change suddenly. It's confusing and, quite honestly, a little panic-inducing. Since it brought me to the truth, I'm actually surprised I kept my head and followed my instincts instead of rushing her right away. If she had lied to me and then deleted those text messages, I would never have read the terrible things she said, never seen how crafty and two-faced she could be, and never learned how little I really knew about her. It would have been shockingly simple for her to lie to me and then erase those texts. I'm headed home to chat to Sarah. I will notify everyone later with the official result. Not expecting it to be a nice one. Here's still another update for you folks. I suppose there is plenty to cover and that much has transpired. If I'm honest, most of it hasn't been that outstanding. Actually, it has been quite shoddy, but I will get to that. I started off somewhat late that evening leaving Mark's residence. Though she had no idea the company was really her sister's affair, Sarah already knew I was out talking business with him. Still, it was approaching an irrational hour partly because I was trying to muster the strength to go home and confront her. Following 2 or 3 pep talks from Mark, I finally got off my keister, texted Sarah that I was heading home, and drove away. As I mentioned in the last report, I was really taken aback when I arrived since Evelyn was sobbing on the couch with Sarah when I stepped into the house. This was most likely the last thing I expected since Evelyn's car had disappeared from the driveway when I returned home. I stopped momentarily and almost spun around and left. I thought Evelyn's presence would make a terrible scenario a million times worse, so this was not how I expected this to be going down. Still, I had plans for which I wished to advance. The symbolic clock was running in the back of my mind. I had friends to tell and wedding plans to cancel. Both Sarah and Evelyn glanced up at me in thanks when I walked into the room, but the litany of charges never materialized. I just looked back, questioning my eyes. The moment passed. Evelyn returned to crying. Sarah returned to consoling, and I let the awkward half-minute hang in the air as I considered. Marty seemed to have neglected mentioning my help with Evelyn's affairs discovery. Not for any other purpose than to watch how Sarah responded, I chose to play dumb. I settled on a reclining chair, dropped my laptop bag, and pulled my phone from my pocket. I pretended to be fidgety with it, then asked them, "What's going on?" Evelyn simply kept crying, but Sarah turned to look at me and said, "Marty is divorcing Evie." Well, certainly, I figured as much. I chose to forward with the obvious inquiry. "What for?" I said to her. Sarah looked at me and stopped massaging Evelyn's back momentarily. Her face seemed to twist and distort practically. Imagine the look a 5-year-old produces when you order them to finish their lima beans or eat their broccoli. Evelyn looked at Sarah a way I wouldn't have known from a sister, and there was a pregnant silence until Sarah blurted, "She cheated on him." Now, I have to admit, this answer really stunned me. I had definitely not expected this. Indeed, the more cynical readers here could believe that, well, the cat was out of the bag, so there's no point in hiding it. And indeed, that is accurate. She could have, however, equally easily pretended to be ignorant or perhaps phrased it another way. Like Marty accused Evie of cheating, instead of essentially verifying it to my face. Though it's part of my job to pay attention to not only what people say but also how they say it, so maybe I'm being pedantic here. Evelyn wasn't happy about this. She sort of sank into the couch a little and performed this unusual simultaneous sigh and sob. I must have stammered a little, but I wanted to keep on and head for the gold, sort of speaking. Sarah most likely saw it as shock, and although she would have been right in a sense, just not in the way she would have anticipated. "Do you know?" Sarah nodded, her hand still massaging her sister's shoulder. She said nothing. "Not slow," I asked the clear follow-up. "How long?" 6 months came back far more readily than I had anticipated. Her easy admission to it startled me. Evelyn was startled as well. She smacked her sister's hand off her, and I believe even Sarah was slightly startled to say it aloud. Leaning back in the recliner, I got ready to pull the rest of the Band-Aid clear. "We aren't planning to get married." From both sisters, there were 2 looks like surprised goats and a chorus of "what?" Rising, I repeated myself, "We're not getting married. Not for 6 months especially. I cannot wed someone who would hide infidelity." Sarah jumped off the couch and opened her arms. The body language screamed, "You can't be serious." But I merely put my palms in front of myself. "I take this seriously. Not little, I dislike this. I can't get married to you with way I feel, and I dislike that you participated in this. One would make a mistake here." The waterworks began right away, and even Evelyn performed the perch-like mouth action meant to be sucking air. Wails from Sarah, claims of not loving her, appeals to my sense of obligation, lost money, trouble for all our friends, humiliation of it all. Though it was really nothing I hadn't considered, hearing Sarah express it through agonizing sobbing felt quite different. I responded, "Look, I already canceled the honeymoon." Trying to persuade Sarah of the finality of it all. "Well, maybe not, since I have no idea how long Marty would have kept my involvement in everything off the books. Not happening is what I'm saying here." The second it left my mouth, I realized it was a bomb, and the explosion was almost instantaneous. To her credit, Evelyn had always been really fast on the pickup, which most likely helped her fool her husband for so long. When she combined my look at the bar earlier in the evening with her awareness, I could almost see the realization setting in on her. She yelled, "You son of a expletive," and shot across the room at me. Though I'm not a big man now and I'm not slouch either, the power Evelyn threw at me caused me to lurch backward. I hardly had time to grab my hands before her finger-based raking of my face began. I nearly dropped the phone I still had in hand, but I pushed her away and yelled very loudly, "Evelyn, get off me! Sarah, get your sister in line!" Evelyn sprang for me once more, but shockingly Sarah wrapped her arms around her sister's waist and kept her in place as asked. Holding my phone up for emphasis, I exclaimed, "Get out of here right now, or I am calling the police," at Evelyn. Sarah urged us both to cool off. She doesn't have anywhere to go right now," she told me, and Marty took her car keys. That explained the empty driveway automobile, but it didn't really matter. With Evelyn, I was 100% through and I wanted to make sure she knew it. I marched into my house office, slammed the door, and called the police. I said I had locked myself in my office, had been attacked by the sister of my fiancé, and that I was bleeding from my face. My vision was fuzzy and Evelyn had scraped me really nicely around the inside of my left eye. I was afraid for my life. I even informed them I had on my phone the whole fight captured. Sarah knocked on the door just as I was wrapping out my call through. Kindly leave. We have to discuss this. Kindly, I love you. Please, do not do this. We have no need of doing this. Even Evelyn wants to apologize. She feels guilty. Though Sarah was clearly losing her expletive, I'm rather confident last one was a lie. I ignored her, and her attempts to cajole me from the office stopped most likely just as the cops arrived at our front door. I decided to come out when I heard Sarah chatting to them. 2 men made up the cops. One of them appeared younger than me, perhaps around Sarah's age, and the other one appeared older and more irritated about life in general. I said hello, pointed at Evelyn, said she attacked me, and volunteered to show the cops the tape I recorded. The younger one questioned whether I intended to file charges. I agreed. Once more, He asked me whether I intended to file charges. Again, I answered yes. Both police glanced at each other at this time. Before the young cop could open his mouth once more, I exclaimed, "Yes, damned it, I want to press charges. I have video proof. This is going to court. Else, I'm going to ask your supervisor to come down and handle it personally." Not that we are buddies or anything, but given my line of work, I spend plenty of time engaging with local law enforcement, and I have seen most of the brass or spoken with them on the phone a couple of times in the last several years. I think they were really shocked that I recognized his name. To be honest, I was starting to get really hot under the collar at this point. Although I could see what these men were thinking, I absolutely disagree with it. Facts are what they are. Facts. Yes, I might not be bleeding on the floor, but Evelyn attacked me in my own house and I wanted her gone. Fortunately, the matter did not quickly get out of hand. The two cops detained Evelyn and placed her in the rear of the police car. She was weeping and squealing all the entire time, like some kind of gibbering crazy. Sarah wasn't any better. She merely kept repeating, "No, please no," again and over. The younger cop rounded around at this moment to ask whether everything was fine here. I simply let them know I was heading to bed. Again, he asked Sarah. She didn't reply right away, so he inquired, "Is everything okay here, ma'am?" By now he was clearly searching for something. Though I hated this man, I bit my lip. Sarah only nodded at the cop when she at last realized he was addressing her. Clearly unhappy with this, the man began to ask her once more. At which point I interrupt, "If you want to go on a fishing expedition, you might want to do it over there on the lawn where my doorbell camera isn't recording you." By now I had pushed my luck with this man one too many times, but what could I do? I believe I was most likely around 30 seconds from having the cuffs slapped on me until his teammate arrived and essentially drew him away. Presumably in his late 50s, he was an elderly man who most likely didn't want to handle two arrests straight at the start of his shift, particularly given one of them clearly would be more hassle than it would be worth. He most certainly guided him out of it, and they left carrying Evelyn away and hopefully permanently out of my life. By now I'm considering whether or not I want to remain here. My parents reside a few hours away, and considering how poor I will be in the near future, ruled out either their apartment or a hotel, so I just chose to sleep in the guest room. I told Sarah we would talk tomorrow, that I was sleepy and didn't want to be bothered. She made some fruitless attempts to persuade me to interact with her in conversation or sleep in our bed. She let me alone, thankfully, and I crashed harder than I had in years. Which basically puts us up to current with the most recent upgrade. But, dear Reddit friends, let me tell you this. The next day was most certainly the strangest effing day of my life. I first got up at 11 a.m. Sarah had cleaned the house from top to bottom. She was still home. I mean, the floor gleamed, the toilet shone. I could lick the bathroom's linoleum and it would have most likely been minty fresh. She clearly had been busy, but when she noticed me she sort of hovered out of direct range, not exactly interesting but seeming like she wanted to say something. I understand. Last night was horrible for everyone and she was most likely unsure. Did I just call off the wedding right in the middle of things? Was I treating this seriously? Was I genuinely furious? Breathing deeply, I told her we had to stop our conversation. I considered rebuffing her when she tried to seat next to me on the couch, but I didn't. We were not getting married, so I didn't have to act like I disliked her since, honestly, I didn't. Though I was mildly appalled by some of the things I had read in her text interactions with her sister, I was disappointed in her. Yet, we were both hurting here and I didn't want to make it any more complicated than it already was. For Sarah to really and completely believe the wedding was off, I had some more convincing work. She was not responding well, that is, understated. She was absolutely wrecked. She was, I believe, occasionally hyperventilating. Though clearly not only was this my idea, but I had also had more time to come to terms with it. I was keeping it together better. She finally addressed the important question. What about us? People are going to hate me a lot for this, especially the kind of Redditors who believe any transgression in a relationship qualifies for nuking from orbit. One could even argue that my calling off the wedding resembled throwing a Moab over our 6-year marriage. Actually though, I had no response for Sarah at that very moment. I told her so. I just didn't know. I claimed I read all those text messages and it revealed a side of her I didn't know existed, and that I wasn't sure about her or our relationship anymore. I replied I couldn't understand why she would go along with Evelyn, discounting Marty and participating in, even egging her on, and cheating on not only him but also their daughter too. I know, it was wrong, I know, she said repeatedly. She couldn't offer an explanation when I asked her for one. She merely stated she had to pick her sister and that she got carried away. I told her I considered a good sister to be someone who kept you on the straight and narrow and refused to grant a free pass allowing you to be a douchebag. She agreed with me and claimed she would try better, but Evelyn had always been the boss when they were little and she was always the follower. I get this. I have an older sibling as well, and although I live somewhat more independently, I spent the previous 18 years of my life living on the other side of the earth with him except for the rare trip around Thanksgiving or Christmas. Still, maybe I had a leg up on Sarah since Evelyn was a piece of garbage while my older brother was a great man. Here is where I experienced my second significant effing shock of life in like 48 hours. To me, Sarah adds, "It's not fair, it's unfair." What is not fair? I sought her. I got over it since you were sexting that bimbo wife Mandy lady on Instagram last year. Though I was harmed, I overcame it. Why cannot you move past this? Why, huh? Where? What the devil is she talking about? Mandy, the bimbo wife. Is who? Like, I have no effing clue. I questioned her whether she had a psychotic break or was high. Alright, that was harsh of me, but I have not been cybersexing or sexting anyone, particularly not some Instagram girl. At this point, I'm objecting very loudly. Sarah is yelling at me through her tears, saying she saw the letters last year and chose not to confront me since I had stopped. She apparently had been looking at my social media from my house computer while I was at work, which should have been quite dull given I only have family and a few work colleagues on there. She's just calling me a liar and a pervert and all kinds of expletive, so I try to make this case to her, offering to let her log into all my accounts and check for herself. Things are spiraling out of control and she begins throwing objects at me. I warn her that, should she toss one more item, I will have her removed from this house exactly like her sister. She stomps off to the master bedroom and shuts the door, swears at me. At this point, I am so damned perplexed I hardly know what to think. I power up my desktop, head into my office, and Google bimbo wife Mandy. Indeed, there is an Instagram, a Twitter, a Reddit, even OnlyFans. When I click on one of the Instagram links, a picture of a really curvaceous woman, like obviously stretching the boundaries of science and technology, comes up. And no, try to guess her country, Australia. Everyone, keep in mind all the great things I spoke regarding my brother, who was lodging with us last Christmas, all the way from Australia. Guess who I mentioned? Sure, go ahead and use my office computer to play games if you have jet lag. Based on what I know, my brother signed into either Instagram or anything else after his wife and children went to sleep and most likely paid money to sext with this girl. What fantastic effing man you are. Now I would want to contact my brother and not only confirm my suspicions but also give him a goddamn earful. However, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. It will have to wait. I am, however, crawling the walls here trying to figure out my feelings about everything. Everyone really lets me down. Damn, what is this planet coming to? I ask myself. Try as I might, it doesn't really come together for a fleeting instant as I try to link whatever the heck Sarah watched my brother do with what she done with Evelyn. She didn't confront me when she saw this. Maybe she's a more forgiving or tolerant person than I am, thus I wish she had. It would have given me a chance to even demonstrate her how I would behave and to straightforwardly explain her my full personal opinion on these matters. I'm not sure whether it would have affected her later on in a positive or negative manner. All I know is that this piece is turning into a novel and I blew off most of the morning when I ought to be getting this out of my thoughts and onto this page. Although I feel better for doing it, there are still most likely 2 to 3 posts to write. I'm not going to upload them to this subreddit longer. I'm not sure they would let me. But, I will try to gently update my profile in the next day or 2 with the rest of the blowout, talking to my brother, talking to my parents and Sarah's parents, and last, where Sarah and I stand. One thing I can say though is that for a variety of reasons most of my direct family ties tend to be somewhat strained. Although my parents are mostly encouraging, as the reality of the financial loss sets in, their support is waning. Indeed, the marriage is still off. From the beginning, that was rather almost guaranteed. Sarah's parents seem a little more agitated. I'm sure they are inserting pins in voodoo dolls made right now in my likeness. For those curious, Evelyn is out of jail. She got Sarah to bail her out, and I even slammed on Sarah for that, labeling her her sister's underling, which I believe really resonated with her as she sent me a 20-page letter about how her sister always dominated her over her whole life. Having read it twice, I wish we had discussed this almost anywhere throughout the past 6 years. Perhaps things would be different. Not clear. Anyway, Reddit, if anyone is still interested, expect a last chapter of this tale in a day or 2 and maybe a follow-up when the former wedding date passes. This update has taken more time to arrive at than I had first planned. Many things have kept me somewhat busy over the past few days. It wasn't until today, when I had some free time following lunch, that I could sit down and get this out. I'll aim to get through as much as I can. But before that, let me mention a few things in response to last post comments. I shall attempt to be succinct. First of all, aside from what I know, Marty is still divorcing her. I know not much else about what is happening with his divorce. Clearly, nothing including paperwork exists, but the purpose is evident. Apart from that, I'm not particularly in a position to be supporting any kind of course of action Marty should follow, provide him legal counsel, or help him in doing anything to the other man or tracking out the other man's wife, etc. Growing ass dude Marty can do with the circumstances whatever he wants. As his friend, my role is only to assist him and provide guidance should he so seek. Second, this is not some kind of guerrilla marketing for an OnlyFans female. If it was, I should have posted it on the initial post, which was seen by nearly 3 million people in first page of Reddit. Given that this post became somewhat famous on Reddit, it's not really surprising that bimbo wife Mandy, another Redditor, happened to be following the narrative and spotted her name. It might have easily been any other of the hundreds and hundreds of girls using Reddit to share their photos. And briefly speaking of Mandy, I have in fact chatted with her. She looks personally really friendly, and she was really extremely helpful in verifying stuff for me. But guys, Mandy is married, clearly quite happily, for almost 2 decades. There are no romance plans here going forward. And honestly, genuinely, her husband must be cool with it. Nevertheless, she is far too much for a simple insurance guy like me to handle. With that all out of the way therefore, on to the update. Last time I wrote, I concluded it believing my brother had chatted with Mandy using my office computer, but it was too late for me to get in touch with him. Among those guys are individuals who, once presented with a challenge, have to be actively working on solutions. This is fantastic for my line of work, but in circumstances like this all I was doing was driving myself crazy. I thus made the decision to inhale deeply, wait till later and go on with what I had to accomplish, leaving everything aside. First thing first was trying to get every person from my side who I had invited to the wedding notified of its cancellation. As you may remember, I had previously told my parents and had them call my relatives on the day I made up my mind. Only Sarah and I know the full guest list, thus I had to do the rest alone. Respect for my friends drove me to choose to call rather than text, but this might have been a bad choice since every phone call usually led to a very long justification of why I was postponing the wedding. Though I could have offered some other explanation, I wanted people to know that I wasn't being lazy or perhaps having cold feet, something inane. Not just for my personal reputation, but also in order to honor the people who had pledged to demonstrate support for Sarah and me that day. This meant it was now dawn time in Australia since I just managed to get in with everyone late in the evening. Though I knew what I had to do, I wanted to be sure my ducks were all in line, so I paused in the kitchen to make a sandwich. Sarah wasn't home, I noted. When she departed and settled down to eat and consider what to do about my brother's predicament, I had no idea. For simplicity here, let's name my brother Carl. Carl and I have always been really close even though he is 13 years older than me. In my life, he was this kind of quasi-parental agent as he was already well on his way to become an adult by the time I could have long-term memory. He was always kind with his time, played with his younger brother when other teenagers would most likely have avoided such an activity like the plague, and generally seemed to me growing up to be rather mature and wise. Simply said, I really respected him. I was still getting used to the concept that he had been sexting a female not his wife in my house, and I had to make decisions. Talking to him about it was clear-cut, but at this point I didn't know if I cared about having him confess only to clear my name considering how shoddy my relationship with Sarah was. Anything may be saved though? For minimum propriety at least, I had to holler at him about this and persuade him to stop. I wasn't sure though, if I should tell my sister-in-law about it or not rat him out. Everything rested on what he said me and whether or not I trusted him. After eating, I got onto Facebook and video phoned Carl. Carl is nearly always available during the day and now works largely from home as a remote office worker since his expertise is IT. And today was exactly the same. It hardly rang more than once or twice before his response. We greeted one another, exchanged some niceties, and then I just sort of jumped into it and asked him whether he had been using my computer to sex chat with ladies on the internet when he was visiting me. Carl's expression froze, and he bent over the camera's out-of-frame view, clearly closing his office door. Definitely yes, I did. Ask me why? He asked me. Under my breath, I swore and told Carl Sarah had believed his flirting was me since he used my computer. I told him I wasn't glad to pay the hit for him, and I questioned him straightforwardly whether Karen knew about this or not. He hesitated for a few seconds, stammered over his words, then looked a little ashamed and answered, "No, Karen didn't know. He would want it kept that way." He continued by saying that, mostly in the bedroom department. Their relationship had been very difficult since their youngest was born 4 years earlier. Carl had always been a quite reserved guy, particularly in terms of personal details. At least he had always been that way when he was chatting to his much younger baby brother. But this time he merely let it all fall out. Things had been horrible. Karen was always exhausted no matter what he did or how much he helped around the house. He had been bored of being turned down. Eventually, this resulted on issues on his side. Some type of performance anxiety on the few times Karen would actually feel up for some bedroom fun, and things just grew worse from there. Basically, there's no amount of socks picked up, laundry folded, dishes washed, or time spent minding children that would get me laid. It was just not happening, he stated. So I started to spend time in my office at night working. He even used the finger quotes to convey this. Apparently, his working at night became a quite strong addiction to OnlyFans sites, which swiftly spiraled out of hand given the relative privacy he enjoyed at his office for legitimate work. When I asked him whether he was still doing it, he swore up and down saying he wasn't. When he said it, I thought I believed him. He seemed to be honest, but I just got this niggling sensation in the back of my mind that something was wrong. Perhaps it was because of all the dishonesty I experienced lately, but I was questioning my own brother, who has been a stand-up person to me our entire life. Being in this state truly disgusted me. The challenge I now encountered here was somewhat sophisticated. First, I would have to have my brother inform Sarah that it was him all along if I wanted my name cleared. But if he did that, then there was no assurance Sarah wouldn't angrily tell Karen. Though at the same time I didn't know if I felt comfortable perhaps throwing a nuclear on my brother's marriage over something he not only stated he stopped. Personally, I thought it would be better if Karen knew. This sort of moral gray area is what I find. Though I didn't know exactly what to do, I urged him to notify his wife about this and start marriage counseling. They had been coming for the past 6 months, he added, and while it was beneficial, receiving a prescription for some generic Viagra had truly helped him. I really took at that, carefully misting my computer screen with water. He told me they had been attempting to schedule at least a couple of times a week intimate time, and the Viagra had helped him overcome performance anxiety to the point where now they were both looking forward to time with each other after the kids went to bed. Everything was basically, hey, this is actually going in the right direction now, please don't screw this up for us. Not only for the benefit of Carl and Karen, but also for my 2 nieces. I truly did not want to be in this position. And if what Carl was telling me was the truth, I could be hurling a firebomb into a relationship that was beginning to heal. It was uncertain what would happen. Indeed, some people would find it disappointing, but at the moment I felt waiting and seeing was the best choice I had. After all, I was going to see him in a few weeks in person, and once I got him alone in a room and a few beers into him, I was going to most certainly find the truth of this. Still, it appeared to be the best line of action any. I got in early that evening. I saw Sarah just the following morning. She seemed sloppish, as though she slept very little. Mostly out of habit after all, we had been together for almost 6 years. I asked her where she had been. She informed me she had drove Evelyn to her parents' place and stayed overnight following her down to the courthouse for her arraignment to post bail. She brought up how terrible it was to have to inform her parents I had called off the wedding. She shouted, "Of course they do," when I asked her if her parents knew the cause. Though by now I was losing it, I attempted to keep cool. Bit back at her, "Are you going to move back there so that they have both girls at home now?" Though it was small and insignificant, her bail of Evelyn from jail infuriated me to no end. She urged, "You don't need to be an ass about this." And I responded, "And you don't need to be Evelyn's FC King underling." When I told Sarah that, I could see her clearly withering. Clearly it had connected with people. Her eyes began to tear at the corners, and I tempered my temper. We basically stood miles apart in our house's living room and said nothing for a good solid minute or 2 before Sarah decided to keep on chatting. "Our parents are coming here at 3. I really palmed at this. Just my own ego, I was about to leave on her without consulting her on this. After all, I did have to meet down with them and hash out the specifics of the wedding and whatever remaining deposit we had, and at least once personally explain to everyone why it wasn't happening. Good, let's do this and clear things out. I tried to keep busy, but on a Sunday there isn't much you can do but waste time. Time wasting isn't very fun when you know you're going into the meat grinder in a few hours. Still, 3 p.m. arrived, as did our parents. Just 1 month after we closed the house, we all gathered around the big kitchen table Sarah had purchased. She loved it even though it was second-hand from Facebook Marketplace, as it was solid oak with a lovely finish and fit for seats. She always wanted to have large dinner gatherings with our family over, just not like this. The next 3 hours were tortuous. Nobody should have been happy. None of them were. Unsurprisingly, My own parents were the best source of support I could find. Yet, even that was limited, basically in line with, well, it's his decision to make, which more or less implies, yeah, we think this is crazy too, but we're still backing him. To be honest, that was great with me. The stigma by connection of calling off the wedding did not need my parents to be obtained. With embracing it, I was good. We finally worked out a reasonable agreement on the wedding. We would try to retrieve whatever money we could, divide it back and then eat whatever losses there were shared together. When it came to the house though, Sarah fiercely disagreed with my suggestion of reimbursing her or her parents the deposit. She basically intended not to move. As you can guess, Sarah and I hadn't really discussed the SRS, same-sex relationship status, living together scenario in too great depth. She was startled when I even mentioned clearing the house equity, since the message here is that I expect her to leave our house. She had a fit, I have no guilt about it. Before attempting to work with her parents on a payment schedule, I should have resolved our relationship status with her first. It definitely indicated to everyone how I felt about our relationship. And Sarah was beside herself. Even if I believe our parents expected it, or at least understood. She made it plain. I am not moving out of my house, and we are not breaking up, she said, clearly rejecting our splitting over this. And that's essentially how my Sunday night came to finish. Sarah and I tried to talk it out some more once our parents left, but we kept circling each other and I had to restrain my natural inclination to run her down until we found a solution. I wanted to switch off my thoughts since, truthfully, I was also rather exhausted. Unbelievably, we ended up just sitting on the couch watching a movie together until it was time to turn in for the night. We left it there with a, "We'll talk about it more tomorrow," and headed to our respective rooms. Monday morning I woke up to a sizable handwritten note shoved under the door from Sarah. I thought I would deal with it later after glancing quickly at the first few pages and headed to work. Sarah still laid in bed when I left. She had to have written that letter late. I started phoning suppliers and venues on my list at the office and set some appointments. It produced mixed bag of outcomes. Under the pretext that I had ordered most of the food, the catering crew insisted that I pay most of their rates. Over here, I shot back at them like, were they expecting me to eat a week-old steak? But my request went unheard. I tried explaining what happened to the woman running the catering company, but it appeared to further strengthen her will to extract as much money from me. By contrast, the DJ I engaged for the entertainment was quite friendly and returned practically all the money. Events proceeded as follows. And during the day, between calls and working, I perused Sarah's letter. This is 20 pages of written work now, hence I will just summarize. The essence of it was that Evelyn has bullied Sarah from infancy onward. Sarah's approach of handling this was to basically follow anything Evelyn wanted to hear. She continued, saying that she was simply terrified and that her life now operated in a kind of generic manner. Fear to upset the balance, create a disturbance, or occasionally even express a viewpoint. I considered this as, honestly, when I look back at our relationship with a more critical eye, I kind of feel that Sarah was a somewhat too perfect of a girlfriend. She never disagreed with me, never chose her plans over mine, or even fairly argued too forcefully against anything I wanted to undertake. She deliberately tried to be helpful and, generally speaking, behaved more or less like a yes-woman in our marriage. Until now, we had never even so much as had a mild debate in 6 years, let alone a full-fledged fight. From a relationship's position, everything sounds fantastic. Until naturally, it isn't. You know, what they call people-pleasing behavior. That is, this deep-seated insecurity and drive to make others happy. When I start looking at it this way, a lot of things make sense to me and I start to realize that despite being with Sarah for 6 years, I really don't know her that well. She seems to have presented this picture all around her, which is essentially a mirror reflecting whatever she believes others desire. In terms of our relationship, she has essentially been playing the ideal girlfriend but never actually letting me inside to see her personally. Hell, it's probably certainly simply another reflection, this time of Evelyn and all her warts and faults. Therefore what I saw in those text conversations is not even the actual Sarah. This sounds strange, but it's as if we are in an unequal relationship whereby perhaps she loves me for who I am and how I present my ideas on my face and my heart on my sleeve. Perhaps though, I love her just for the mirror she is pointing up to my face. I'm right there as well, however I'm not sure if this sounds too metaphysical for you. I'm still attempting to grab by my fingertips this wisp of an idea. The letter Sarah sent me was the first actual insight into her upbringing that I had seen. All I know is that in the past few days, I have most likely learned more about her than I have in the past 6 years. That evening, we continued our conversation, more especially, regarding her behavior and background. Our final decision was that she requires assistance. Too afraid to offend anyone lest she face her sister's fury, her parents' censure, or the loss of love from the one she loves, she is a grown woman who is sadly trapped acting like a child. This is not how a relationship should be, so I can say that I feel far more confident and sure that my call off of the wedding was the right one. Actually, it may not be any more accurate. After our conversation that evening, I went to bed far less tense than I had in a few days. I couldn't locate more, hence the story most likely finishes here. Thus remarked Pepe if you watch this long-ass video.